Episode 261, The Manga Drawings. Miranda lived in a quiet street in a rundown part of New York. Anyone who could afford to had long moved away from the area, and the only people who remained were very poor or simply too old to consider moving. There were hardly any other young people there at all. She lived in a tiny apartment consisting only of one room. The bathroom and kitchen were shared spaces with other residents. It was 8 a.m, and she was walking toward her apartment with Lucas, who had been following her since the previous day. She turned her head and looked at him irritably. He had a muscular frame, but his face was cold and expressionless. He's quite good looking, she thought, annoyed at herself for her wayward musings. Why is he following me? And why did those horrible people kidnap me? What is this all about? She wondered. I'm home now. I can look after myself. Can you please stop following me? She asked. Lucas met her gaze and answered decisively. No, Mr. Foster ordered that we need to protect you at all times. I'm only following orders, he replied. She rolled her eyes and asked, So, how long are you going to be tagging along? Lucas didn't answer. Surely you don't expect to come home with me? She asked. He nodded and said, Well, it's the only way to make sure there are no bad people lurking around your apartment. She knew instinctively that he didn't have ill intentions, and it occurred to her that he hadn't had anything to eat or drink for a long time. When was the last time you ate anything? She asked with a kinder tone. I'm not hungry, he replied. She sighed helplessly, not believing him. It was the first time she had seen such a straightforward and self-restrained man. She took her key out of her purse and said, Follow me. I have some food at home. After he's finished eating, maybe he'll leave, she thought. I won't be able to work properly if he's hanging around me all day. Lucas followed her up the stairs without speaking. She lived on the 2nd floor. As they walked up, Lucas frowned. The corridor was small and dingy, and the air smelled musty. When he had been in the Special Forces, he had suffered all kinds of hardships, so the dilapidated apartment was nothing to him. But the thought of a young woman living there irked him. Miranda unlocked her door, and they walked in. This place is tiny, Lucas thought. There's little more than a bed, a desk, and a closet. Although the room was small and hadn't been decorated in years, it was also tidy and spotlessly clean. Miranda looked around in embarrassment and pointed at her small bed. I don't have a chair, but you can sit on the bed. I'll get you something to eat, she said. She went to the communal kitchen and began making fried eggs and sausages. Lucas looked around the room. There were several manga drawing books on the desk. I thought she was trying to become an actress, he thought. He spotted a sketchbook and curiously flipped through the pages. His eyes widened in surprise when he saw how good her drawings were. These are brilliant, he thought as he looked through her work. They look like professional comic book drawings. Surely she could get these published. Episode 262. What did Miranda draw? Lucas flicked through her comic sketches. Most of them were girls' comics, and beyond the obvious skill, he didn't have much interest in them. But the last page of the book drew him to look closer. It showed a grassy background with a naked man who looked injured and close to fainting. The man in the picture was a remarkably close likeness to Dario, and the scene depicted was very much like the one 5 years ago when he had found him. The picture confirmed Lucas's suspicions that Miranda was indeed the woman who had saved Dario all those years ago. The question is, he thought, why did Mimi not recognize Dario when she was in the hospital? Did she really not know who he was? Or did she have an ulterior motive? He wondered. She must have done the painting years ago, but the memory must still be in her mind somewhere. Lucas's thoughts were interrupted by an angry voice behind him. What right do you have to touch my things? Miranda demanded loudly. She stormed over and placed 2 plates of eggs and sausages on the desk. It was simple food, but Lucas was not used to the hospitality, and he felt unusual gratitude for it. It had been a long time since another person had made him food out of pure kindness. He took out the painting and asked, Miss Mimi, do you know the person in this painting? Miranda looked down at the painting and seemed momentarily stunned. She feigned indifference and said, I don't know, it's just a comic book character, but please don't touch my things. She's lying, Lucas thought. The hairstyle, his injury, and even the ring on his finger are all exactly as they were that day. Miranda had painted the ring with great care, and it accurately depicted a design that was unique to the Foster family. The person you drew is the person you saved 5 years ago, who was also my boss. That ring you painted so accurately was custom made for him. If you hadn't seen it before, you wouldn't have been able to draw it, Lucas asserted confidently. It's none of your business. I've just cooked you breakfast. Please eat it and then leave, she said. her pretty face frowning in anger. Lucas couldn't understand why she was so angry, but he decided to continue with his line of questioning. "Of course it has something to do with me because I've been searching for you for the past 5 years, he replied. "Since it's obvious that you remember him, why didn't you admit it when you were in the hospital yesterday? Has someone threatened you?" he asked worriedly. "No one threatened me. This matter has nothing to do with you. This is my home. Please leave now and give me back my painting," she snapped. Miranda stepped up to him and tried to push him out of her room, but he was far too strong for her and didn't budge. "If you don't leave right now, I'll call the police," she threatened. The angrier she got, the more she aroused Lucas's curiosity. "Call the police if you like," he said, nonchalantly sitting on the bed, and confident in the knowledge that he had enough contacts in the police to persuade them not to get involved. "So what if he's your boss? What does this have to do with you? Why must you force me to tell you something that even your boss doesn't care about? Why do you care?" Lucas's eyes narrowed. She had as good as admitted to knowing who Dario was. What does all of it mean? He wondered. What do you mean that he doesn't care? Why would he spend 5 years looking for you if he didn't care? And why did you say you didn't know him? He asked, confused. What does it matter to you if I know him or if I don't know him? You saved me, and I'm very grateful to you. But I don't want you to pester me anymore, so don't blame me for being rude. I want you to get out of my apartment, she said, with a sad look in her eyes. If you admit to being the person who saved him, he will help you out of your current situation, Lucas said, looking around the room as if to illustrate his point. Episode 263, The Jigsaw. Miranda looked at Lucas with sad eyes and said, I don't need your charity. I'll succeed through my own hard work. He looked at her with appreciation, surprised at her tenacity. She's quite similar to Miss Winslet, he thought. Miranda stared at the painting he was still holding, and then she rushed forward and snatched it out of his hand before tearing it to pieces. Her actions were too fast for Lucas to react to, but he looked down and noticed that it had been torn into only 4 pieces. He kneeled down, picked them up, and put them in his inner pocket. Then he stood up, grabbed her wrist, and asked, What are you doing? It's my picture. If I want to tear it, I'll tear it. If I want to keep it, I'll keep it. What does it have to do with you? Get out and don't come back, she ordered, with tears in her eyes. Lucas looked at her with sympathy and let go of her wrist, and then held out a business card and said, My personal number is on that card. If you encounter any danger, call me immediately. She refused to take the card and turned her head away from him in protest. He placed the card on the desk and then left quietly, closing the door behind him. The room felt so empty with him gone, and Miranda couldn't maintain her composure any longer. She sat on the floor right where she was, hugged her knees to her chest, and sobbed. Lucas stood outside the door and listened to her crying. He waited until the crying had stopped before he quietly walked down the stairs and left the building. He took the painting out of his pocket and looked at it carefully. His thoughts drifted back 5 years. If it had not been for me, Dario wouldn't have suffered such a serious injury, he thought. But if it hadn't been for Lucas, Dario would have also died long ago. The bond between them was the reason that Lucas had stayed on and had worked for Dario faithfully ever since then. Miranda had no idea how long she'd been crying and sitting on the floor before her legs became numb, and she stood up shakily. She went to pick up the 2 plates of food and found Lucas's business card. She noticed that next to the card was a stack of cash. It must be at least $2,000, she thought. There was also a bank card. What did he leave this for? She wondered. He's just an employee, and he doesn't even know me. She put the money in the bank card in her purse, and then she paused, looking at the business card, and put it in the desk drawer. Lucas stared at the dilapidated building. It wasn't just the building that was run down. The whole street looked like it could do with being demolished and rebuilt. This is not a safe place to live, he thought. The street is too dark and too narrow. No wonder no one noticed when she was kidnapped. Even if anyone had seen it happen, there would have been no one to help her. Everyone has either moved away or is too old to look after themselves, let alone a woman in distress, he thought. She's not as vulnerable as she looks, though, he reflected admiringly. She may be slim and young, but she has a strong spirit. He took out his cell phone and called Dario, who was driving back to Washington. Dario answered the call with the car's hand-free system. Lucas didn't engage in any pleasantries, but got straight to the point. Mr. Foster, I found something of interest in Miss Mimi's apartment. I'm certain that she's the woman who saved you 5 years ago. What did you find? Dario asked calmly. It turns out that Miss Mimi likes to draw and paint. I found a picture that looks exactly like you did when she found you. I'll fly over with it, and you can see for yourself. There's no mistaking the likeness. "A painting," Dario said, surprised. "I'll see you soon," he added, and hung up the phone. He continued driving with a thoughtful expression on his handsome face. Lucas made another call as he made his way to the airport and arranged for two men to covertly look out for Miranda. 2 hours later, Lucas arrived in Washington from New York, accompanied by David. Dario had been at the film set where Jade was working but left to meet them at his office in the Milliken Agency building. His luxurious office took up an entire floor and even had a gym and a bedroom. As soon as Lucas walked in, he took the painting from his inner pocket and presented it to Dario. He arranged the pieces together like a giant jigsaw on the desk. The three men stood and looked down at the damaged picture. David gasped excitedly. "I didn't expect Miss Mimi to be so good at painting. It's clearly you, Dario, but why did she pretend not to know you when we saved her from the kidnappers?" Lucas looked at David and frowned. Although he appeared to be just Dario's driver, David knew that their friendship went deeper than that, and that Lucas had his boss's trust and respect. David stopped talking and looked at the picture again. Episode 264. The last piece of the puzzle. "Mr. Foster, since we've confirmed that she's the girl who saved you 5 years ago, what do you think we should do now?" Lucas asked. Dario didn't reply, so Lucas continued. "She seems to be deeply troubled. We know that she moved out of an orphanage and into the one-bedroom apartment she lives in now, where she shares a tiny communal bathroom in the kitchen. We believe that she has a younger brother, and that they became separated when she entered the orphanage and haven't been reunited since. It seems that she's alone in the world." Dario listened to Lucas, but showed no sign of emotion. David said quietly, "Dario, look at this woman. Miss Mimi saved your life, no matter what her circumstances are now. You'll help her, won't you?" Dario's eyes flashed with concern for a moment, before he regained his usual, inscrutable composure. He stood in silence, staring at the picture for what seemed like a long time. David finally broke the silence and said, "Dario, is it because of Jade? Is that why you're so cold to Miranda? I can understand how you feel. Don't feel pressured. Jade isn't the sort of person who'd make trouble for no reason. I can help you explain it to her if you want me to." Lucas then spoke up. "When I found her painting this morning, I kept asking her to admit that she knew you, but she seemed angry, as if she misunderstood your intentions. Why didn't you tell her the truth? Why didn't you tell her that you've been looking for her all these years? You could make her understand that you want to help her." Dario reached out, gathered the pieces of painting together, and stuffed them into his desk drawer. "Both of you, leave me now," he said. Lucas and David looked at each other helplessly and walked out, closing the door behind them. David sighed. "What the hell is Dario doing?" he began. "He spent so much time looking for that woman that I thought he'd be excited to see her. At least he should express his gratitude to her, but in the hospital, he didn't even bother to talk to her. No wonder she doesn't admit to knowing him if he treats her like that." Lucas looked at him disdainfully for pondering a question with such an obvious answer. "Of course, it's because he's married Jade and has conflicting feelings," David thought. Dario has always kept his feelings close to the chest. "He's not like other privileged rich people who like to play with other people's feelings," David said. "He doesn't keep a multitude of beautiful women around him, and he's always avoided getting close to others." David had long since made peace with the rumors about his friend that he was either completely unfeeling or that he was interested in men. But he had known that Dario had just been waiting for the right woman. "Now that he's married Jade, he's handed his heart over for good. That's why he's not interested in Miranda," David continued. "He's not afraid of letting Jade down. He's afraid of letting himself down. He only has room in his heart for one woman," David continued. "And even though Miranda saved his life, he's already committed his heart to Jade." "It's not in our place to meddle in his affairs," Lucas replied. "Let him settle it himself." Lucas left, and David stood alone and wondered if he was right. "I always felt that there was more to the story from 5 years ago than Dario told me. I wonder if he's keeping something back," he thought. In his office, Dario opened the drawer with trembling hands and carefully pieced together the picture. "Other than me, who else could the person in the picture be?" he wondered. He closed his eyes and thought back to that time 5 years ago. His mind replayed the images of the girl. Flashback from 5 years ago. Her voice had been as sweet as a bell. "Hey, wake up! You're bleeding badly," she had said. "Is someone chasing you? Wait a minute. Lie down here. I'll put on your clothes, and they'll think that I'm you. They won't find you," she had said in her sweet voice. "I won't die," she had reassured him. The fortune teller said that I'll live a long life. Besides, you're the one they're looking for, not me. I'll be fine. Don't worry. Call me Mimi. Mimi. The woman's name lingered in Dario's ears. As the memories came flooding back to him, he recalled all kinds of scenes, and he felt pain behind his eyes. He massaged his temples with his fingers in an attempt to alleviate his now splitting headache. His breathing became unsteady, so he took several deep breaths to gather himself. He took out his cell phone and looked at a photo of his wife. The pain in his head began to ease, and he phoned Jade. Jade was at the film set in a small village. She was working hard and had left her phone in the care of her new assistant, Violet. Violet heard the phone ring and giggled when she saw who was calling. "Hey," she said as she answered the phone, intending to have some fun and cause a little mischief. But she was surprised to hear that Dario's voice was as cold as ice. Episode 265. A surprise phone call. "I'm looking for Jade," Dario said curtly. Violet's smile froze at his brusqueness, which was not at all what she had expected. She immediately abandoned the idea of teasing him. "Jade is currently filming. Wait a moment, please. I'll ask Caroline when she'll be free to talk," she replied, flustered by his manner. He seemed so nice when I saw him kiss Jade goodbye, she thought, but he sounds absolutely terrifying on the phone. He must only be nice to Jade. Now that is a truly good husband. I'd love to find one who treated me like that. Violet quickly found Caroline and informed her that Jade's husband wanted to speak to her. Caroline nodded, walked over to the director, and quietly spoke to him. The director nodded his head and shouted, "All right, everyone, take a 10-minute rest." Violet looked on, amazed that Caroline had the influence to tell the director to order a break. She has so much authority, she thought admiringly. Caroline followed Jade into her trailer and handed her the phone. "There's a call for you," she said, before leaving and closing the door behind her. Jade realized that the break must have been called because of the phone call, and she wondered what was so important that it would lead to a pause in filming. "Hello?" she said politely. "Jade," Dario said, excited to hear her voice. "It's me." Hearing his familiar and sexy voice on the other end of the line, Jade smiled broadly. She wiped the sweat from her brow and relaxed into her chair, relieved to be talking to her husband. "Hi, Dario. Why did you call me while I'm working? We were together just a short while ago and I have to do my job." She chided him gently. "I miss you," he said simply. She was pleasantly surprised to hear his words, and she giggled like a schoolgirl. "I can't believe that my successful and busy businessman would take time out of his day just to phone me and tell me he misses me," she thought. It was the first time that he'd called Jade to tell her that he missed her, and she was very happy about it. Then a worrying thought struck her. "Dario, has something bad happened? Is anything wrong?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately, and she began to panic. "Everything's fine," he finally replied. "I missed you. Anyway, what's going on with you?" he asked. Dario's magnetic voice enchanted her, and she felt her heart flutter as her face turned red. Jade enjoyed the sensation of being missed. She smiled mischievously and said, "Me? I've been so busy that I haven't had time to think about you." "Is that so?" Dario replied. "You promised me that you'd think of me 100 times. How many days do you think it will take you before you make it to 100? He asked. Jade's face turned pale when she heard him as she remembered the promise that she had made, and Dario's threat of her needing to compensate him if she didn't fulfill her promise. "Why have I got such a big mouth?" she wondered. "I'm always getting myself into trouble. Dario always keeps his word." "I was just joking, Dario," she said with a laugh. "I missed you when I was filming, and I still miss you," she said in an effort to placate him. "Then tell me what you were thinking about when you thought of me," he said teasingly. "Were you thinking about how you lure me to your bed time and time again? Or were you thinking about the things we do to each other in bed?" he asked suggestively. "Do you have to be so vulgar?" Jade asked, blushing furiously. "What nonsense are you talking about? I don't lure you," she said in mock anger. Before he could form a reply, she cleared her throat and added, "The director said it's time to get back to the set. I'm sorry, but I'll have to hang up the phone." "You can't hang up until you've given me a kiss," Dario said firmly. "No, what if someone hears us?" Jade replied shyly. She was about to disconnect the call when he said, "Come on, Jade, it's only a kiss. It's not as if I'm asking you to have phone sex." She was struck by how much she loved him and she wanted to please him. She tried to imagine what his expression was like, and it made her smile. All right, I'll send you a kiss, you rascal," Jade said reluctantly. She held the phone to her mouth and made a loud kissing sound. "Are you happy now?" she asked playfully. She was overjoyed at how connected she felt to him at that moment. Dario didn't answer, so she said in a quiet but formal voice, afraid of being overheard, "Mr. Foster, can I please hang up now?" His low and bewitching voice sounded in her ears again, and she was afraid that she would never be able to tear herself away from the phone. Episode 266, Obsession. Jade couldn't wait to see her husband in person again. "Okay, you need to miss me 100 times, got it? You can hang up now," Dario said. He quietly waited for her to disconnect the call before he put his phone down. Jade smiled contentedly, her face slightly flushed as she opened the trailer door and handed her phone back to Violet. Violet looked at her with a mischievous grin. She couldn't resist the temptation to tease her. "Jade, you look like you're in love. You only saw each other this morning. You can't bear to be away from each other for more than a few hours, can you? I think you're desperate to make the beast with two backs with him," she teased. "Violet, what nonsense are you talking about?" Jade said, blushing violently. She's just as vulgar as Dario, she thought. "Well, if I'm talking nonsense, the next time he rings, I'll just tell him that Jade doesn't want anything at all from him and not to call back," Violet said with a grin. Jade found her assistant's comments both irritating and funny at the same time. "Stupid girl," she replied. "You wouldn't dare." Jade poked her in the tummy, and the two of them started to wrestle good-naturedly. Caroline looked at the chaotic revelry with a disappointed expression and approached them like a schoolteacher. "An assistant needs to act like an assistant. Hurry up and get Jade a glass of water to drink," Caroline said. "Yes, Caroline, I'll go now," Violet said with a mocking tone, and stuck her tongue out at Jade as she went to fetch it. "Thank you," Jade said, as she took a sip of the ice water, her face full of satisfaction. She didn't notice that Robert Radcliffe, who was sitting nearby, was staring at her closely, his eyes betraying a definite interest. The director called everyone together, and Jade immersed herself in her acting once again. Dario sat in his office in the Milliken Agency building and stared at his phone's dark screen. He tapped the screen a few times, and a photo of his wife appeared. He pictured himself hugging her. "If she wasn't busy acting, I'd drive there at this very moment to find her," he thought. Amelia Stevens sat in her new costume, scrolling through her phone, her face full of pride. She was surprised that Dario had made good on his promise to get her the lead role in The Female Thief. "I'll make a big name for myself very soon," she thought. Jade is lucky to have a husband who is willing and capable of doing anything for her, she thought with jealousy. An idea came into her head, and she smiled craftily. "Jade, did you think that I'd let you off the hook so easily because your man is protecting you? Well, I haven't finished with you yet," Amelia muttered to herself. As she scrolled through the various social media sites, she became increasingly frustrated. Why does everyone love that silly brat? She's everywhere, she thought angrily. Who cares about which stupid dress she's wearing? She wondered. Amelia continued scrolling through her phone with increasing disdain. Jade, I will take everything from you, she thought. Amelia couldn't bear to read anymore, and she angrily turned off her phone. There was a trace of coldness in her eyes as she called her assistant over. Richard, have you done what I told you to do? She asked contemptuously. Richard hurriedly brought her a coffee just as she liked it, and then scuttled around behind her to massage her shoulders. Everything you instructed me to do has been done to the letter, he said in a deferential tone. After a pause, he continued cautiously. But Amelia, I think we might have gone a little overboard. If anyone finds out we were behind this, it could backfire and affect your reputation. And it wasn't easy for you to finally land this leading role. When she heard the words, finally land this leading role, a dark expression came over her beautiful face. She put her cup down heavily, turned, and slapped Richard hard in the face. What do you mean? How dare you mock me? She screeched. No, Amelia, I didn't mean it like that. What I meant was that, as you were so famous, it would reflect badly on your reputation if anyone found out about this, he explained desperately, while holding his hand to his cheek where he had just been slapped. Amelia's lips curled up slightly, and her eyes were full of contempt. She said indifferently, So what if anyone finds out? After all, you're the one who did it. What does it have to do with me? A look of panic appeared on his face as he wondered what the consequences could be for him if he was discovered. How can you say that? It was you who told me to do all those things, he said fearfully. Oh, really? Did I ask you to do it? Do you have any evidence? She said in a cold tone as she played with the phone in her hand. Anyway, she continued, what do you think I pay you for? And if you want to continue to be paid, Then you'd better do as I say and do it well. Now, go and buy me my favorite health smoothie and be back here in 10 minutes. Richard gritted his teeth and shuffled away. She knows very well that it will take me at least half an hour to be back here with her smoothie, he thought. She just wants to make my life difficult. Richard left in a hurry, and Amelia took out her phone again and called Bruce. Bruce was sitting at his computer in his office at the Stevens Group building. He was looking at Jade's selfie in one of her social media accounts. He opened up the article on her and skimmed through it. He had become obsessed with finding news about Jade. He had read almost everything that had been written about her. At first, he didn't notice his phone vibrating beside him. All his attention was on Jade's picture. She looks so perfect, he thought dreamily. The noise coming from his phone finally registered, and he picked it up. Amelia started scolding him the moment he answered. Episode 267. A Sibling's Support. Bruce, what's wrong with you? Do you know how many times I've called you? Amelia roared angrily. Bruce looked at the missed calls on his phone and realized that she'd called him several times. He looked away from his computer screen and asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" There was a lot that Amelia wanted to get done, so she decided to forget about the minor things that she'd intended to talk to him about. Instead, she went straight to the most important matter. With a sly expression on her face, she said, "Bruce, do you want to give Jade a fatal blow?" "I've already arranged everything, little brother," she said. "You mustn't miss this opportunity. I've already derailed the relationship between you and Jade, and reporters will soon come looking for you. When the time comes," she continued, "you must know what to say. Very soon, everyone will think that Jade has made a name for herself thanks to the Stevens family. But now that she's become famous, she's ruthlessly dumped you because she's a tramp who will do anything for fame." Amelia was very pleased with herself. Dario would facilitate her rise to fame, while Bruce would remove Jade as her competitor. "I'll be killing two birds with one stone," she thought smugly. Bruce didn't answer her. He was too busy looking at pictures of Jade on his computer screen again. Sometimes he reflected that his obsession with Jade was unhealthy, but it never stopped him, and he always overcame those doubts. "Hey, Bruce, why aren't you saying anything?" she asked in a shrill voice. "Let me make it clear to you, I've been making these arrangements for a long time. Please don't screw it up. I have to start filming soon, so I can't talk about it anymore. Just remember what it is that you need to say." Amelia was about to hang up when she suddenly thought of something important and continued. "Also, I asked you to investigate Dario. How's your investigation going? Have you found out anything about him?" Bruce's face darkened when he heard that name. If Amelia hadn't told him, he wouldn't know whom Jade was married to. When his sister mentioned Dario's name, Bruce became enraged. If it hadn't been for him, I would have never ended up in the police station, he thought. Ever since Bruce had spent time in prison, his father had been keeping a sharp eye on him, afraid that he might bring further disrepute to the Stevens family, and Bruce blamed Dario for that. Jade had protected this man and showed affection for him in front of Bruce. She had made him suffer, and he was looking forward to taking revenge on her. His eyes were filled with malice as he thought of what it would feel like to finally have his retribution. "Hey, Bruce, what's wrong with you? I'm talking to you. Can't you hear me?" "You aren't taking me seriously, are you?" Amelia said, irritated at his apparent indifference. "Ever since he came out of prison, he's been acting strange. He always seems cold when I talk to him," she thought. "I wonder if anything to do with Jade is just too emotional for him to handle." "Do you really want to know who Dario is?" Bruce finally answered. "You mean you found out who he is?" Amelia asked excitedly. Bruce's expression was cold as he gritted his teeth and said, "He's from the New York Foster family." "The Foster family in New York?" Amelia muttered in a strange manner, as if searching her brain for a lost memory. "The Foster family?" she thought. "It can't be. No wonder it was difficult to find him. I didn't expect him to be that important." She'd heard a lot about the Fosters when she was growing up. "Surely it can't be that family," she thought. "Bruce, are you talking about the Foster family who made it onto the list of the richest people in the world last year?" "Oh my God, no way. This is unbelievable," she exclaimed. Although Amelia's family was rich, compared to the legendary Foster family, they were like paupers. The Fosters monopolized the financial market in many different areas, operating all over the world, and had influence over the finances of several governments. But although the family had a lot of money, they kept a very low profile. No one knew the extent of their wealth or how many people were in the family. So Dario is a member of the fabled foster family, she said. This is a very exciting development. He is a lion among men. He would be a good match for me, she thought, her jealousy of Jade increasing. He should be my man. Jade doesn't deserve someone like Dario. I was sure that he was rich, but I didn't expect him to be so influential. Bruce, I've decided that I'm going to marry into the foster family, she said, and she laughed manically. Bruce didn't like the thought of his sister with Dario. That man makes me feel insignificant, he thought bitterly, like I'm worthless. He clenched his fist so tightly that the veins bulged in his forearms. I knew instinctively when I met him that he was something special. That damn Jade must have used some kind of seduction technique to trap him. She doesn't deserve to be with him, Amelia said spitefully. The only reason that she got to shoot the Adele Barracu commercial and take the lead female in Decadent Lady is the foster family's money and influence, she added unhappily. On the other side of the line, the thought of Jade being married to Dario was making Bruce frown in disgust. Episode 268, A Social Media Storm. Bruce sat and stared at Jade's picture. She's smiling so happily in this photo. It's been a long time since I've seen her smile like that. Ever since she's been with Dario, she's only treated me with contempt, he thought. He hated her bright smile. Her perfect smile once belonged to him, but that had been 5 years ago. I won't allow anyone to enjoy that smile, and I won't allow her to share it either. If I can't have that smile anymore, then I'll destroy the smile on her face, he decided. He grinned nastily and said to Amelia over the phone, Don't worry, I'll do as you ask. If she loses her reputation and the ability to smile, then I will be happy, he thought. That's good. When the time comes, you add fuel to the fire. The reporters will be very interested in the gossip about this new movie star. I have no doubt that they'll play their part in destroying her reputation, she said, and then hung up the phone in satisfaction. A very good show is about to take place, she thought. Bruce put down his phone and stood up to leave when an assistant knocked on the door, and he sat back down. Come in, what is it? Bruce asked her coldly. The assistant walked up to him and placed a file on his desk. He opened it and began reading. The file described Jade's patterns of behavior, what places she frequented and when, as well as where she was likely to go in the future. Bruce looked up at his assistant and asked suspiciously, How did you find this information so quickly? When Bruce had sent people to investigate Jade previously, they'd found out almost nothing at all. It had been as if someone had been working hard to erase all information about her. The assistant looked confused and confessed. I don't know what's going on either, but yesterday someone sent me an email detailing all the information that you had asked to check. The email was anonymous. I've tried looking into who sent it, but I can't find the source. I think that someone may be helping us in secret, she added tentatively. Whoever it is, they must be quite influential to have discovered that we're investigating Jade and to know all the details of her schedule. Bruce observed his assistant as she spoke. He stared intently at the contents of the file and fell into deep thought. Who is helping me? And what's the relationship between this person and Dario? What motive could our secret helper have? He wondered. Amelia sat thoughtfully for a moment before dialing Ivana's number. Although Ivana and Bruce had not yet held a wedding ceremony, they had already received their marriage certificate, so they were officially husband and wife. Ivana had been living in the Stevens family home, but Bruce's parents were disappointed with her. It was because of her fake pregnancy. Even Ivana didn't feel happy there. She had put in a lot of effort in order to marry Bruce. Ivana was not well thought of by the Stevens family, so when she saw Amelia's name flash on the screen, she immediately picked up the phone and spoke in a sweet voice. Hello, Amelia. Is there anything I can do for you? Ivana, there are some things I need your parents to cooperate with. I don't think it should be a problem for them, Amelia said casually while fiddling with her nails. Ivana was confused, and she asked with uncertainty, Amelia, what are you trying to say? Don't worry, Ivana, it's a good thing, Amelia replied in a kind voice. But over the phone, Ivana was unable to see the malice in her eyes. Jade had been busy acting, so she hadn't any need for Violet. Violet's job was to be ready with a drink of water and to massage Jade between shots, and what that meant was that she had a lot of time to herself. She had quickly become bored and had started browsing her social media. She was stunned to see the storm of abusive comments about Jade. Violet's heart skipped a beat. As she read, She realized that several quite important people had made slanderous comments about her employer. Most of the negative content was about what she had done prior to becoming famous. And they were claiming that she had become famous by relying on the influence of Bruce Stevens, whom she had seduced, even though he was her cousin's fiancé. He had apparently abandoned his uncle and aunt who had raised him so that he could be with Jade. She had then shown no gratitude for the sacrifices that he had made and had dumped him unceremoniously. Violet became increasingly frustrated as she continued reading. What nonsense is this? She thought angrily. I never knew that Jade and Bruce had been in love, but I was her classmate for 3 years, and I know that she's never been the sort of person that they're describing, she thought with certainty. She looked at each of the main social media platforms and found that they were all discussing the scandal. There was speculation that Bruce's influence had been the reason that Jade had managed to get the leading female role in Decadent Lady, and that she had often frequented bars and had slept with lots of different men. Anyone who spoke up to defend Jade was immediately met with a barrage of nasty comments, so it quickly became the case that no one dared to say anything in support of her. The trend continued to worsen, and there was a stream of vindictive comments aimed at Jade. Who started all of this? Violet wondered. And why can't people tell that it's all nonsense? Whoever set this up is clearly acting out of jealousy. Violet looked over at Jade, who was engrossed in acting a scene, and she felt deeply sorry for her. She'll be devastated when she reads these comments, Violet thought sadly. She hurriedly took her phone to Caroline, who scrolled down and read several of the posts. Caroline's usual calm expression was replaced by a look of shock. Okay, I'll handle it, she said. Don't tell her about any of this, and don't give the phone to her, she added. I understand, Violet said. Caroline messaged Dario and informed him about the situation. Following Dario's instructions, Lucas had been keeping an eye on the latest social media gossip, and he was surprised to see the storm of negative comments about Jade. Episode 269, The King's Palace. Someone is taking a risk by provoking Dario like this, Lucas thought as he scrolled through the latest vitriolic posts about Jade. He drove directly to Dario's office to brief him on the new developments. He entered the office and found Dario sitting at his desk with a solemn expression, looking at his computer screen. It looks like you already know, Lucas said as he put away his phone. Dario had been reading the stream of negative comments and was already up to date with the general gist of them. Mr. Foster, how do you want to handle this matter? Lucas asked in his usual direct manner. Dario didn't reply. He looked like a predator who was ready to pounce on his prey, and Lucas almost felt sorry for whoever would be the recipient of his fury. If David was here, he would have run away if he saw him in this mood, Lucas reflected with a slight smile. It seems like someone purposely released these lies, Lucas said. I'll investigate it straight away. He was about to leave when Dario waved his hand and said, No need, I already know who's responsible. Who? Lucas asked. Amelia, Dario replied coldly. Bruce's elder sister, Lucas asked. Find out why she did this and who helped her, Dario instructed. I'm on it, Lucas replied. Lucas wasted no time. First, he found the initial comments and traced them using their IP address. In under 10 minutes, he had a list of names and addresses. These idiots think that they're anonymous, he thought as he printed off the list of names. Amelia must have spent a lot of money arranging this, he thought. He went back to Dario to report his findings. I have a list of the people who first started the scandal. It can be traced back primarily to Richard Miles. He's Amelia's assistant, so it seems reasonable to conclude that Amelia is behind it all, just like you thought, Lucas said. This Amelia must have a death wish, he thought grimly. Jade had been busy on the Decadent Lady film set, and she had no idea about the ongoing social media storm. Any of the film crew who began gossiping were quickly scolded by Caroline. By 10 o'clock in the evening, Jade had finally finished filming the day's scenes. It had been a busy day, and they were well ahead of schedule. Violet had spent most of the day worrying. Whenever Jade had taken a rest, she'd asked if anyone had tried to contact her, and Violet had replied that no one had. That way, Jade hadn't any reason to check her phone. Knowing that she would soon have to return the phone to Jade, Violet took one last look at the social media posts and was amazed to find that all the vitriolic messages had disappeared. She rubbed her eyes incredulously. Did I just dream it all? She wondered. It was as if nothing had happened. The initial comments and all the subsequent replies from fans had all been deleted. The current trending news consisted of positive comments about Jade's dress and how beautiful she had looked in it. Violet excitedly ran over to Caroline to show her the phone, but Caroline simply said, "It's all sorted now," in her usual calm manner. Violet was baffled as to how it had been achieved, but also greatly relieved for Jade. Jade walked toward them, and Caroline intercepted her and said, "Hurry up and change your clothes and remove your makeup. Tonight, we need to rush back to Washington, and tomorrow we start work on your next movie, which is called The King's Palace. That's in Los Angeles, and time is very tight, so you'll need to be quick." "Okay, I'm coming." "I thought that I'd get the chance to rest," she thought. "I had no idea that I was going to be doing another movie as well." Jade sighed in exhaustion. She had heard that it was easy to make a name for yourself in old costume movies, and she was grateful for the work, but she had hoped to catch up on sleep. "I'm going to have to stay up late tonight and get up early tomorrow," Jade thought, exhausted at the thought of what the next couple of days would entail. She was disappointed that she might not get the chance to go home and see Dario. After changing her clothes, Jade got into Caroline's car. She kept her eyes open just long enough to send Dario a message before she fell asleep. "Dario, I'm going to Los Angeles tomorrow to start work on another movie. I'm leaving tonight, so I'm not sure when I'll get to see you next. I miss you." Violet felt sorry for Jade and draped a coat over her to keep her warm. "I thought that being a celebrity was meant to be fun and exciting," she thought. "So why does Jade look so sad? I guess it's not that easy to be a movie star." She looked up and realized that Caroline had not taken them to Washington Airport. "This looks like it must be a private airport," Violet thought. "There's a luxurious private plane over there with Dario standing next to it. What's going on? Didn't Caroline say that we were taking a plane to Los Angeles? Is this the plane Caroline was talking about?" she wondered. Violet looked at Caroline with her mouth agape. "Oh my God, Caroline, surely this can't be Dario's private plane," she said in disbelief. Episode 270. A good man is hard to find. Caroline nodded and said quietly, "Shh, don't make so much noise. Let Jade sleep. She has a very busy day tomorrow." "Okay," Violet mimed, zipping her lips closed. She eyed the private plane. She simply couldn't believe how powerful and rich Jade's husband was. He could actually afford a private jet, and he was even willing to indulge his wife. Heavens, he was a rare good man. When Dario saw Caroline's car, he immediately straightened up and walked to meet it. Violet opened the door and jumped out hopefully, but Dario didn't spare her a glance. He picked Jade up like she was Sleeping Beauty. When Dario lifted her, his eyes were especially tender, and his movements were very gentle. Violet was extremely envious. She would happily die 100 times if only she could find such a man. After Caroline finished parking, she helped Violet onto the plane with her luggage. There were two handsome men already inside. One of them had blonde hair, and his smile was very bright. Violet's immediate thought was, fresh meat. Although the other man was also very handsome, he looked cold and hard to get close to. Handsome Dario was surrounded by men who were also pleasing to the eye. Compared to Violet's excitement, Caroline was much more dignified. The moment she got on the plane, she found a seat and settled in comfortably. "Wow, who's this little beauty?" David spotted Violet and went up to greet her. Lucas nodded at them, but remained in his seat with a contemplative look on his face. "Hello, I'm Miss Winslet's assistant. My name's Violet." Violet hadn't expected anyone to greet her and was very excited. "Miss Violet, even besides such a beautiful woman as Jade, you still shine," David said. Violet flushed with embarrassment. David opened his mouth to continue, but Dario glanced at him coldly. Noticing that Jade was sleeping in his arms, he immediately shut his mouth. Dario really does go overboard with protecting his wife, he thought. David quietly pulled Violet to the side and said, "Don't worry, don't stand on ceremony. I'll get you some food. Later, I'll take you to the room you'll be sleeping in." "Wow, there are separate rooms on the plane?" Violet asked in surprise. She really hadn't expected that. She had never been on a normal plane before, let alone a luxurious private one. "You really are living in a different world when you're part of a big star's entourage," she thought. Violet had imagined that they might have to change planes because Los Angeles was so far away. She had looked at her schedule and estimated that she would need to leave about 3 hours for boarding. In addition to the time spent waiting in line, it would definitely have been an early morning. She hadn't expected that not only would there be a private plane, but there would be space to sleep on it, And there were so many handsome men on board. She was simply too happy. Dario ignored them and silently carried his wife to their room. Jade was so sleepy she didn't notice at all. She shifted in his arms. Dario placed her on the bed and she immediately found a comfortable position and fell into a deep sleep. He looked at her tired face and couldn't help but kiss her slightly pale lips. There was a trace of heartache in his eyes. After covering her with the blanket and turning off the light, he sneaked out. He found Lucas waiting for him at the door. Clearly, he had something to talk to him about. Dario walked 2 steps, opened the door of the meeting room, and sat on the sofa. "Sit down and talk," he said coldly. Lucas took out a folder with a piece of A4 paper in it. It was a printout of a couple of draft articles set to appear in Explosive Weekly the following day. Naturally, they were about Jade. Explosive Weekly was a celebrity gossip magazine for the entertainment industry. It had a certain amount of influence and especially liked to report celebrity scandals. It was very popular among readers. Dario looked at the piece of paper. After reading the contents, his originally gloomy gaze suddenly became murderous. There was even a trace of danger in his eyes, as if he was going to destroy the world. The articles were extremely slanderous. They were mostly about Jade's background. What surprised Dario was that they had actually interviewed Jade's uncle and aunt. Her relatives had distorted the facts and told how they had helped their orphan niece through hardships, treating her as if she was their own daughter. However, they had not expected Jade to be so heartless. They said she had completely severed her relationship with the Winslet family. That was the content of one of the articles. The other one was about Jade's private life. It revealed that she had once had a relationship with the young scion of the Stevens group, Bruce Stevens. He had been her cousin's boyfriend, but Jade had snatched him away from her. Her cousin had been so angry that she had had an abortion. It concluded that Jade was both cold and heartless. The words of the article were as unpleasant as they could get. It was simply unbearable to read. The chief editor of the magazine had personally handed Lucas the drafts an hour before. The articles had been written by an intern reporter who had already been fired and permanently banned. He was probably still wondering why he had been blacklisted. If Lucas hadn't been made aware of these articles in time, they would have been on the streets the following day and it would have caused a sensation. Everyone knew that news on the internet could be deleted, so that was easier to handle. But paper media wasn't that simple. You couldn't go out and collect up all the papers that had been sold. Fortunately, these articles would never be published. Dario's face was tense, and his expression was intimidating. As soon as he figured out that Bruce was involved, his eyes filled with contempt. He had never thought that Bruce would be a coward who could do such a thing. He simply couldn't imagine how Jade had spent 5 years with such a man. Episode 271. Where have my clothes gone? Bruce actually dared to slander Jade behind her back. Even if he was a poor excuse for a man, how could he hurt a woman like this? Dario wondered. The Stevens family enjoyed a certain status in Washington and had some money. He hadn't expected someone from such a good family to be worse than an animal and to want to hurt Jade over and over again. It seemed that the lesson they had given him the last time was not enough. The disdain in Dario's eyes became even stronger when he thought about it. There was a murderous glint in his eyes when he thought, a man like that will never be worthy of a woman like Jade. Even if it was in the past, he felt like killing him for having dared to touch her. Bruce has done some petty things over and over again. He clearly didn't learn his lesson last time, Lucas said. Even Lucas, who never liked to meddle in other people's business, couldn't stand it anymore. This man was a beast. And then there's his sister, Amelia. I didn't expect that after meeting you she'd become even more audacious. The woman overestimates herself. She isn't satisfied with being the female lead in a movie, but on top of it, wants to get rid of Miss Winslet? She deserves to die, Dario, and look at these people in the interviews. How can they live with themselves? Lucas was speechless at the shamelessness of Jade's uncle and aunt. He'd already run a thorough background check, but he hadn't expected them to be so brazen. According to what he knew, the assets of the Winslet family had belonged to Jade's father. She should have inherited them, but because she was under 18 when her father passed away, her uncle and aunt had taken the money. They lied and said that they had used it on her behalf, and now they're claiming that Jade abandoned them, he thought. How evil can they be? Dario's sharp eyes stared intently at the document. Suddenly he threw the paper away. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly and revealed a malicious smile. His voice was like ice. Of course, I will pay them back double." The next day, Jade woke up in a daze and muttered, "Caroline, are we still not at the airport?" But when she opened her eyes, she found herself lying on a bed. The room looked familiar. Just as she was wondering where she was, she saw the painting hanging on the wall and recognized her surroundings. This was the same plane she had taken last time. She lifted the blanket and realized that the clothes she had worn the day before had been removed. Someone had changed her into super sexy pajamas. Jade ran her hands through her hair. When she thought about how she'd fallen so deeply asleep that someone could strip her out of her clothes, she became extremely shy and blushed. It must have been Dario's doing. But then, why isn't he here? She wondered. She was sure he had slept beside her, as she still had a sense of his warm, familiar presence. She had just taken off her pajamas to get dressed when the door opened. Standing in the doorway was her handsome and flawless husband. Jade shrieked and immediately picked up her pajamas to cover herself. She even turned away from him, but her alluring back was an equally fatal temptation to Dario. He was stunned for a moment. Then he closed the door as fast as he could and locked it, so they wouldn't be disturbed. He put down the breakfast tray he had just prepared and kissed her fiercely. Then he hugged her slim waist and pressed her against him. He said in a hoarse voice, "Wait, you want to seduce me first thing in the morning?" "Who, me? Seduce you? I just want to change my clothes. Hurry up and leave," Jade said excitedly. The pajamas in her hands slipped down accidentally. As she was naked and pressed tightly against Dario, the scene instantly became very awkward. Dario felt his lower abdomen tighten. His mouth was dry and his words became even hoarser. "You say you're not luring me on purpose. Look at you. You even took off all your clothes." "They fell down by accident," Jade said. She covered her chest with her hands and quickly turned around to find her underwear and clothes. She then ran into the bathroom and only came out after she had put them on. When she walked out, she found Dario drinking ice water. She rushed forward and snatched the cup from his hand. She said nervously, "Darling, why are you drinking ice water so early in the morning? It's not good for your stomach." Dario stared at her body. He was still thinking about the scene just a moment ago. Then he put his cold lips next to her ear and said in a bewitching voice, "If I don't drink it, it will be bad for certain other parts of my body. Do you have the heart to see me suffer?" He pulled her hand over and placed it on his crotch, making her feel how hard and hot he was. Shocked, she quickly pulled her hand back and looked at him awkwardly. She even coughed twice, pretending that nothing had happened. Then you should continue drinking." Jade deliberately turned her head away to avoid looking at him. However, Dario ducked his head in front of hers. "Continuing to drink will hurt my stomach. I can't win. Do you want to give it a go?" Dario's low voice rumbled in her ears. It was as if he was trying to lure her into a trap, making her unable to extricate herself. Although she didn't know what the trap might be, based on her understanding of him, she knew that it was definitely not a good thing. "No, I don't want to," she said decisively. Then she immediately changed the topic and asked curiously, "What time is it now?" "It's 7 in the morning. Yesterday you fell asleep in your agent's car, so I brought you here." It was rare for Dario to answer one of her questions directly. They had landed in Los Angeles 2 hours before, but since everyone had gone to sleep, they had decided to stay on the plane until morning. Episode 272. Awkward Affection. Jade looked at Dario awkwardly. When she thought about how he had secretly taken off her clothes, she was so ashamed. She hadn't even known what he was doing. "All right, don't think too much about it." Dario seemed to have read her mind. "Come and have breakfast. A busy person like you might not have time to eat later," he added. He reached out his hand and gently tidied her messy hair. His eyes were full of love. Then he said, "There weren't many ingredients on the plane. We'll just have to make do with what's available." Jade looked at the breakfast on the table and thought that it was still very sumptuous. There was coffee and a bacon sandwich, as well as yogurt with fresh fruit in it. It was enough to satisfy her. She hadn't expected him to make breakfast for her on the plane, but nor had she expected him to accompany her to Los Angeles, since it would take him a few hours to go back and forth. Thinking about the day before, when he had driven over specially to find her, Jade's heart swelled when she looked at the man in front of her. She stepped forward and hugged his strong body. She said coquettishly, "Darling, you don't have to work so hard. Caroline and I could have flown over together. If you traipse after me all day, won't you fall behind on your own work?" "You would have to wait for a long time for a commercial plane," he said. You sleep like a log. Aren't you afraid of falling asleep at the airport? Dario pinched her nose. There was a faint smile on his face. Jade frowned. So he used a private plane to pick me up so that I could sleep a little longer, she thought. She lowered her head in shame, burying her face in his warm chest and saying apologetically, Dario, I'm sorry, I'm not a good wife. I don't spend enough time with you. Ever since he had married her, he had always been working for her and she had never done anything for him. She only wanted to get closer to him. He had needed to travel halfway across the country just in order to spend a few hours with her. Her career was really making things difficult for Dario. She even began to doubt whether she was right or wrong to pursue her dreams. What nonsense. In my eyes, you're the best wife. As long as you're happy, everything is worth it. I know you like being an actress, so I won't stop you. Don't feel burdened. Just be happy. Remember, it was my greatest fortune to meet you again. Dario hugged her tightly. His voice was extremely tender. Listening to his gentle voice, Jade felt as if she was about to fall into it. But what did he mean by saying that he had met me again? Have we met before? Jade wondered. Jade decided that he was talking about the first time they had met at the bar, so she didn't ask. She looked up into his face. A pair of charming eyes flashed back at her, and she stood on her tiptoes, lifted her head, and kissed his thin lips forcefully. Afraid that his response would be too much, she quickly let go and buried her head in his chest again. She said coquettishly, Darling, why are you so good to me? She always felt that Dario's appearance had been like a miracle. She didn't believe that such a perfect man, who was handsome, rich, and so good to her, could be her hubby. She was the happiest woman in the world. However, she was afraid that one day she would mess up, and her situation would change from heaven to hell. Dario held her tightly in his arms and leaned down to speak in her ear. He used an extremely gentle voice to say to her, Jade, ever since I was young, I've been surrounded by girls, but I never had a relationship because I hadn't yet met a woman that made me fall in love. Until you. There's only one person in my heart. I can only give my life to one person, so from the moment I decided to marry you, there could be no one else. I can only give my heart to one person. So in this life, I will only ever love you. Do you understand? His voice dropped to a whisper. My Mrs. Foster. It hit the softest part of Jade's heart. She quietly looked into his eyes and found that they were deadly serious. His gaze made her heart tremble. She never would have thought that this man, who had always been so calm, would be so shaken by his feelings for her. Her eyes filled with tears, not because of sadness, but because she was so moved, so happy. Jade couldn't help but kiss him again when she heard those touching words, but this time, Dario didn't plan to let go of her so easily. Just as she was about to pull away, he extended his wide palm and grabbed the back of her head, forcing the two of them to continue kissing. They had only been apart for a day, but Dario had gone crazy thinking about her. The more they kissed, the more excited he became. His movements became ferocious, as if he wanted to swallow her whole. Jade tried her best to cooperate with him. She felt a surge of heat and a strange tingling feeling throughout her body. The two of them were locked in a fierce kiss. It went on for so long that Jade felt that she was about to die from a lack of air. Only then did Dario let go of her. She leaned into his embrace. Every time she kissed him, Jade felt as if all the strength had been drained out of her body. She supported Dario so that he could support her. Only then would she be able to stabilize her crazily beating heart. If I had never met him, Jade thought, my world would still be dark. It was only because of him that there were so many colors and so much life in it. She leaned against his chest and breathed heavily. After a long time, she regained her senses. Dario, you were so affectionate just now, but you said so much. How tiring. Next time, you can just say that you love me. Jade had a smile on her face as she deliberately teased him. But what she said echoed what was in her heart. All she wanted right now was to hear those 3 words from Dario again. Episode 273. 3 Little Words. The first time Dario had said, I love you, Jade had been in the bath. He had whispered it in her ear, very quietly, and then afterward, he wouldn't admit he had said it. And that was also the last time. Although he had said many heartfelt words to her since, what she longed for the most was to hear those 3 little words again. Dario acted as if he hadn't heard her clearly. He asked doubtfully, What did you say? I said, say I love you, Jade repeated. I know you love me. You don't have to confess it to me so early in the morning. Dario pinched her nose with a smile. Jade examined his expression closely. Only then did she realize that she had been played. Damn it, how could I have forgotten? She thought. His ears are so sensitive that he could hear an ant walking across the table. How could he have not understood what I just said? I've been fooled by him again. She angrily grabbed his hand and bit it. She said unhappily, You really can't say it. Will you die if I say I love you? Of course I'll die. I'm afraid you'll love me to death in return, Dario said with a straight face. Jade was so angry that she stomped her foot, but she couldn't beat him at his own game, so she really didn't know what to do. She bit her fingernails. Dario pulled her fingers away from her teeth and kissed them carefully. From the look on his face, it was as if he was not kissing a hand, but tasting a delicacy. Jade was so overwhelmed that she quickly pulled her hand away. She never knew that her hands could be so sensitive. She felt an unsettled squirming in her stomach. Dario held her with a burning gaze. He moved closer to her ear and spoke in a hoarse voice. I think you actually love this kind of thing. I don't have to say it out loud. I have a simpler and more physical way to show you what true love is. The atmosphere became electric. Dario's eyes were fiery. But Jade didn't understand the meaning of his words. She asked him naively, You don't have to say what? What do you want to do? Do you really want to know? Dario raised his eyebrows and asked in a deep voice. She felt a familiar surge of lust. What was Dario thinking, making her feel like this now? She blushed. She bit her lower lip and stared at him. You damn ruffian! I want to eat. I'll be very busy later. Jade hurriedly let go of his hand to eat breakfast. Dario went to the bathroom and told her to finish all of the food. She felt very awkward while she ate because the door to the bathroom was transparent. It was exactly the same as at the hotel they stayed in. The table was facing the bathroom, so when Dario took off his clothes for a shower, Jade could clearly see every inch of his body. Her hands trembled as she ate the sandwich Dario had made for her. She raised her head and accidentally met his eyes, and she quickly averted her gaze. How annoying that he caught me peeking at him, she thought. The corner of Dario's mouth curled up into a perfect arc. He lathered himself with the shower gel while staring at her. He shouted from the bathroom, You can look if you want to. No one is stopping you. Let me tell you, this is a rare opportunity. This is the most delicious breakfast I've ever prepared for you. Jade almost choked. How can he be so shameless? She wondered. Hurry up and finish washing. Who wants to see you? You're shameless. Jade drank her coffee quickly. For some reason, after seeing his body, she felt restless. She even felt thirsty. Even drinking a whole bottle of orange juice didn't quench her thirst. Dario called out, What? Don't you like this delicious dish of mine? If you don't look now, I'll have to strip naked every day for you to see. Jade almost choked again. She was about to scold him, but Dario added, I'm serious. Do you think I won't do it? She could only glare at him. Of course, she knew he definitely could do it. He had all kinds of ways of getting through her defenses. She could not beat him at all. In the end, she could only obey his command to look her fill. While eating breakfast, she watched him wash himself, and she could feel her face getting redder and redder. Right now, it must be like a tomato, she thought. She held the plate in her hand angrily and muttered, Dario, you pervert. I don't want to see you anymore. I'm going on a business trip for a month. Although she spoke very softly, Dario still heard her. Being used to her scolding, he was not only not angry, but also let out a pleasant laugh. He even deliberately rubbed his lower body in front of her. Jade almost felt that she was watching an adult film. When she was with him, he really wanted to challenge her limits. That's okay. You go on your business trip for a month, I'll go with you. And you like looking at me, don't deny it. Doesn't that mean that you're a voyeur? Dario said with a hint of mockery in his tone. Jade was so angry that she trembled and firmly pressed her lips together so she wouldn't say anything else. After a long 20 minutes, her breakfast finally ended, and Dario came out of the bathroom, naked. He even deliberately slowed down the speed at which he put on his clothes. Episode 274. The King's Palace. He spent so long in the shower, I'm surprised you haven't washed all your skin off, Jade said through gritted teeth. She deliberately turned her head away. If she hadn't been afraid that he would really strip in front of her every day, she wouldn't have looked at him at all. Dario had just finished putting on his clothes when there was a knock on the door, and Violet said, Jade, are you up? Caroline said that we're going to leave soon. I'm up. I'll pack up and be right out. Okay, then we'll meet you outside, Violet said, and left. Jade's heart got a little heavier. She was going to leave. It meant that she was going to be separated from Dario again. She looked at her husband reluctantly. He was wearing casual clothes that day, but he was still handsome and charming. After she had packed her things and was about to leave, Dario suddenly pressed her down on the bed without any warning because he couldn't wait to kiss her lips. His kiss was as passionate as before. Jade wanted to respond to him, but she knew she needed to get going, so she just kissed him gently and moved her head away. Dario, stop it. I have to leave soon. Don't light the fire again. Dario's eyes narrowed, and there was a strange expression on his face. He had not expected that comment from his wife. However, she was right. It was uncomfortable to burn like this, but he still couldn't stop himself from giving her another passionate kiss because not kissing her was even more unbearable. The two of them were locked into the kiss for an endless moment, and it was only with much difficulty that they separated. Before leaving, Jade reminded him to have a good meal and not to drink ice water all the time. But Dario said to her in all seriousness, "Don't worry, as long as you don't deliberately entice me, I won't have to cool myself down." Jade pouted and responded unhappily. "Can you blame me for you torturing yourself? I came here for work, remember?" Dario didn't go outside to see her off. After she disembarked from the plane, Jade got into the car arranged by the film crew and waved Dario goodbye. Because the King's Palace was a historical drama, it required a special studio that was only available in Los Angeles. This was America's most famous movie studio complex. It was said to have been built by the Millikan Agency, which was the company Jade had signed with. However, she had never been there to shoot a movie before. She found the place spectacular. She hadn't expected the company she worked for to be so prominent. Jade was becoming more and more curious about the head of Millikan. What kind of person was in charge of such a media empire? Not only had they built a great company, but also a huge company. The world-famous movie studio complex was not only for general filming, but also had sets for different historical periods. Walking around, Jade felt like she was in ancient times. Every building there was built according to the architecture of times past. There were no modern things at all, and it was very suitable for her film. It was the best choice to shoot a historical costume drama there. The sets were completely different from the natural scenery. The surroundings were almost entirely man-made. That realistic ancient palace, that imposing city wall, the delicious-looking palace food, that majestic royal court, all of them were exquisite works of art. It was as if they'd been teleported to Tudor England. It was very imposing, with streets and courtyards covered in fake cobbles and surrounded by tall stone walls. There was even an entire church, with gargoyles peering down from above the huge double doors. Going inside one of the massive studio buildings, Jade found herself in the interior of the palace, where majestic thrones were waiting for the king and queen. That was her. She couldn't wait to sit on the throne. Just looking at it made her feel dignified. Even Violet could not help but sigh. "Wow, this place is so beautiful. It's great that you'll be filming here. Your acting will be spectacular. I can't wait to know what you'll be doing in the movie. I heard that Millikan spent hundreds of thousands just to build the sets. And Jade, the place you are staying in is amazing. I'll take a photo of you later." Jade was stunned. She hadn't expected the company to spend so much on this movie. But waves of tourists visited the complex every day, and the ticket sales alone were worth thousands. She hoped her contribution would make the company recoup its money. She believed that as long as she relied on her own hard work, her days would definitely get better and better. The boss of the Millikan Agency was very talented. He could make money so easily. The opening ceremony for the movie was to take place in the largest square in the studio complex. Caroline showed her to the dressing room. The moment Jade had entered, a professional makeup artist greeted her with a smile. He was very enthusiastic, and he recognized her at a glance. Jade was a little surprised. In the past, no one had recognized her. Now, no matter where she went, there would be people who knew her. This made her feel very strange and very happy. Jade had seen the script of the movie, King's Palace. It didn't have a specific female lead. There were 3 main female characters, and they were all interesting roles. Each person's scenes were very important, and each had their own specific location. It was not necessarily the main character that was the most important. Some supporting roles were even more exciting than the leads. The plot centered around the fights between the king's wife and mistresses, a story of love and hatred in and out of the palace. Episode 275. A Familiar Figure. When Jade followed the makeup artist to her dressing table, she found that the other actresses had already arrived. They included some of the top stars in the country. Jade had seen some of them on TV before, but she hadn't ever expected to see them in real life. While that was exciting, the fact that some of them knew her name was even more thrilling. "Hey, aren't you Jade Winslet? I saw your commercial. You were amazing. I really didn't think you'd be so gorgeous in person. All of you beautiful young people are going to put me out of a job," said Eva Gould, the A-list celebrity whose dressing table was next to Jade's. Back in the day, Eva had gotten her start in a popular TV drama. Although she had played the part of the villain, her character had become more popular than the female lead. Ever since then, her popularity had been rising. "Oh no, Miss Gould, you have so much talent. You've played so many roles and the camera loves you. You're much prettier than on TV. Well, I mean, you look beautiful on TV too," but Jade was so overwhelmed she couldn't speak properly. She had never met such a famous actress before. Violet watched the interaction and became more and more jealous. Eva Gould tended to avoid talking to fans, but she greeted Jade like she was an old friend. Apparently, Jade had already attained a certain status in the entertainment industry. Violet knew she shouldn't underestimate her. Jade's costume required a headdress, which meant she needed to change before putting on makeup. When Jade came out in her costume, Violet was stunned. When she did speak, it was nothing but praise. "Oh my God, you look magnificent. I think you look even better in period costumes than in modern ones. You should definitely do more period dramas in the future," she gushed. "Violet, you're exaggerating," Jade said, blushing, and took her place in the makeup chair. Violet grew quiet as the artist got to work. Bored, she looked around and saw that everyone's clothing was amazing. This production was going to be very popular. Then her eyes detected a familiar figure in front of one of the smaller dressing tables. She frowned, wondering who would be here that she would know. She walked over, and then a mean smile appeared on her face. It was Rosie. Rosie's table was in a dark corner. It was poorly lit. The person working with her didn't seem to be a makeup artist. It was her assistant. They didn't even assign her a real makeup artist, thought Violet. How embarrassing. When she saw all this, she pulled Jade's sleeve excitedly and pointed in Rosie's direction. "Look," she whispered. "Isn't that Rosie?" Jade looked in the direction she had pointed and realized that it was Rosie. She seemed very unhappy and was shouting at her assistant. The assistant looked miserable. The last time Jade had encountered her, Rosie had slapped her in front of the entire crew. But Jade was determined to let bygones be bygones. She said to Violet, "Yes, that's her, but let's just focus on getting ourselves ready. We don't need to worry about her," Jade said, hoping to calm Violet down so she wouldn't do anything foolish. But Violet didn't want to let Rosie off so easily. Her lips curled into a snarl as she deliberately walked in Rosie's direction. As she got closer, she pretended to be surprised to see her and called out, "My goodness, if it isn't the big star, Rosie. Are you working on the King's Palace too?" "But Rosie, where's your makeup artist? Your assistant can't possibly do a good job. What costume are you wearing? The maid? What? Don't tell me you're playing the maid. Jade has the part of the king's favorite mistress. How sad for you from supporting actress to a bit part. How's that for karma, you little tramp? Did you think you could get away with slapping Jade? I'd like to teach you a lesson right now." Rosie's face darkened as she listened to Violet. Then she looked around angrily and saw Jade wearing the mistress costume. She glared at her with jealousy. The costume was a deep purple dress trimmed with gold. Jade's round eyes, rosy lips, and soft skin glowed. Her long, silky hair was caught up with an elegant hairpin. Her hands were decorated with gold rings. A single diamond hung over her forehead from the delicate tiara she wore. Once Violet saw that Jade's makeup was complete, she hurried over to take pictures of her and post them on social media. She posted on her own account. Under the picture, she commented, "Goddess Jade's new movie is simply beautiful." Jade hadn't expected that her assistant's post would start trending right away, but it got a lot of attention. Everyone wanted to know who the actress was, so Violet told them. That drew thousands more followers. Many people sent Violet direct messages asking her to take more photos of Jade. Rosie looked angrily in Jade's direction and clenched her fists. The favorite mistress. Is that what she was? She thought. Episode 276. No role is too small. Rosie hadn't realized that Jade had a leading role in this movie. It made her even more miserable. When had everything changed? Rosie felt like she'd been slapped in the face. Since she had slapped Jade in front of everyone, she had never landed another leading role. She couldn't even get a supporting role, and her manager had given up on her. She had started focusing on other actresses. Rosie was hoping that this role would get her back on track. It wasn't much more than being an extra. She only had a few lines. It was as if she was cursed to only get small parts. She had even tried seducing the director, but it hadn't helped her to get a better role. Jade, on the other hand, had started getting lead roles so easily. Was she some kind of goddess? It was so unfair. Rosie looked at Violet with disdain, but when Violet turned toward her, she changed her expression to reveal a fake, generous smile. Violet thought that Rosie's acting skills off the set were much better than the acting she did in her small roles. "What's wrong with playing the maid?" Rosie asked. "What great actress hasn't had to work her way to the top? No role is too small. If you do it right, you'll win over the audience. Some people just aren't strong enough to handle a smaller part. Did you see how many big names there are in this movie playing all kinds of roles? People in those roles have to be careful that when the time comes, they don't drag the movie down." Rosie explained this loudly and raised her eyebrows knowingly. She wanted everyone to know that she was referring to Jade. As she spoke, she slowly walked toward Jade. Although Rosie's face was smiling, Jade could see the smile didn't reach her eyes. People like Rosie could be terrifying. "Wow, Jade, what a coincidence to meet here after all this time, and you finally got a leading role. I'm sure you realize that there are many more experienced actors in this movie. Will you be able to keep up with them?" Rosie asked as she patted Jade's shoulder condescendingly. "Oh, Rosie, maybe you forgot," Violet said, taunting her. "This isn't her first leading role. Jade has already had the lead in The Decadent Lady." "Well, just to be sure you're willing to work hard, Jade. Try not to humiliate the rest of us on the set," Rosie said. Then she paused for a moment and gave a fake smile. "Don't worry, I'll definitely work hard," Jade said lightly. Violet took the opportunity to step between the two of them. "Don't worry about her, Rosie. Remember, you'll have to work hard too. You mustn't let the audience forget that you are a palace maid." Jade's acting skills were highly praised by our instructors at university. As a matter of fact, it was the director of this film who personally chose her. So of course, there won't be any problems, Violet said bluntly. Rosie gave them another counterfeit smile and said, "Well, in school it's easy to stand out. The teachers tell everyone how great they are. You realize that it is the real entertainment industry, don't you? This movie is supposed to be the blockbuster of the year. The audience is dying to see it. We don't want to let them down. Plus, this movie is an adaptation of the novel. Fans of the book will be very critical, especially if a character doesn't match what's in the book. If an actor isn't careful and they don't please the fans, their reputation could be ruined." Hearing this, Jade's body began to tremble. Rosie had spoken the truth. Jade had seen many fans of a book rip a movie apart because it didn't do justice to the source material. Often, this was because the actors portrayed the characters differently than in the novel. The fans could get ugly, and word would spread that the movie was no good. Rosie glanced at Jade coolly. She continued to lecture her. "But Jade, don't get so stressed. That rarely happens. We just need to put on a good show. Usually it's just one particular character that upsets the fans. Fortunately for me, it's seldom a minor character. I'm sure you could handle something like that," she added. "But if I were you, I'd be careful not to get overconfident. Everyone has their own part to play. Sometimes inexperienced actresses end up with the lead in a big production like this. If they don't act well, that could be the end of their career. They might end up playing minor roles for the rest of their life. As for me, I'm happy in my role where there's no pressure. I wish you success. Let's get started." After her piece, Rosie walked away swinging her hips confidently. Violet said to Jade with disgust, "She doesn't know what she's talking about, Jade. Don't take it to heart. She's just jealous of your part. It's all just sour grapes." "Yeah," Jade said weakly. Rosie's words had brought her down. She hadn't had a lot of confidence in her abilities for this movie to begin with. After listening to Rosie, she became even more nervous. "Jade, what's wrong with you? Stop looking so worried," Violet commanded. "I'm fine," Jade assured her. As Rosie turned away to leave, she was seething. Her eyes were full of hate and frustration. She still couldn't believe that this inexperienced brat had the lead while she was just a nameless maid. Her world had turned upside down. After Dario had dropped Jade off in Los Angeles, he asked the pilot of the plane to return to Washington. There was one more thing he needed to take care of. Once he had stepped onto the tarmac, he asked Lucas to give Amelia a call. He hadn't expected her to come over as soon as Lucas had called her. This time, he hadn't needed to go to her house specifically to invite her, as he had the last time. Episode 277. Seen enough? Amelia spied 3 handsome men as soon as she entered the VIP room. Surprise flashed in her eyes. She'd only expected Dario, not also his friend David and his personal bodyguard Lucas. She carefully sized up Lucas. He was quite good looking, but he was not as important as his boss. "Dario, it's been so long since you last called me. I've missed you," she said, flirtatiously. Her high-pitched voice made David wince. His eyes never left Dario. She'd been thinking about him ever since she'd last seen him, and he was still just as handsome. Dario glanced at her coldly and then said, "You may call me President Foster." Amelia looked at his impassive face and smiled awkwardly. Since there wasn't a seat next to Dario, she had to sit opposite him. Knowing that she would be seeing him, she had dressed especially for him. She wore light makeup and a dark, see-through blouse. Her black bra was visible underneath. It was as if she was deliberately trying to show off. When she sat on the sofa, she arranged her body into an alluring pose. Her short, tight skirt rode up so high that her underwear was almost visible. Most men would have been easily seduced by her appearance and actions, but it just so happened that the men she was facing were not ordinary. She was dealing with 2 icebergs and a fool. No matter how Amelia flirted, Dario's gaze never landed on her stunning body. He didn't even look at her. Lucas's face was full of disdain. But David had no problem admiring her gorgeous clothes, long legs, and large breasts. It would have been a waste not to enjoy them. He stared for a long time, and Amelia couldn't take it. He was not the one she wanted staring at her. "Hey, don't you think you've seen enough?" she said, sarcastically. David got angry when she said it. He was just admiring her and didn't deserve to be bullied. But he didn't show any anger. Instead, he just smiled even more brightly and gave her a very appreciative gaze. Lucas and Dario both knew from his expression that something was about to happen. "I'm just looking at you because you're pretty. After all, you did dress this way intentionally. I've never seen anything like it before. Someone dressed so well in see-through clothes. Look at that bosom. Look at that waist. There's no need to take anything off, is there? Don't you agree, Lucas?" David asked the bodyguard. Lucas didn't respond. He glanced at them both apathetically and remained as frozen as an iceberg. Amelia rolled her eyes. He didn't deserve her attention. She continued to stare at Dario intently. She wanted to maintain a ladylike image in front of the man she loved, so she was ignoring David. But he kept going. He looked her over from head to toe. Then he shook his head and clicked his tongue. He said solemnly, "Miss Stevens, you can't wear this. This will not attract our president. Do you think he's an ordinary person? Come on, let me teach you. I think that skirt should go even higher so we can really see the underwear you're so desperate to share with us. Is this how you charm people? And this blouse of yours, the colors are wrong. You need to wear white, not dark, see-through clothes. Then we can see all of you more clearly. And your chest, you're only revealing half of what you have to offer. You're too stingy. The bra really must go. Don't you think that would get your point across better?" Amelia hadn't expected David to speak to her that way. It was insulting. She was from an important family. He had no right to embarrass and insult her that way. She angrily grabbed her bag and glared at him. She told him, "I think you've said enough." "Hey, you're the one who dressed like that. I was just trying to help," David said. "You're so fierce. President Foster isn't interested in a woman like you. If you're so desperate to show off, show yourself to everyone so that they can enjoy it. Honestly, the girls in this club do a much better job than you." "What did you say? You're comparing me to the girls in this club? Do you know who I am?" "Mr. Swan, don't go too far," Amelia shouted, as if she could not believe that someone dared to speak to her like that. Then David continued, pushing her over the edge. "Miss Stevens, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. You're not nearly as good as those girls. The girls in the club are true beauties. Besides, they wear nicer clothes than you. You dress more like a prostitute. It's too vulgar," he said, and looked at Amelia with disdain. It was really not in his nature to speak like that to any woman. He was usually very polite, but this time he really couldn't bear it. The person in front of him could no longer be called a true woman. Amelia was furious. There were 3 men in the room. Surely they couldn't all think like that. She turned her gaze to Dario, who had shown no reaction. "Mr. Foster, did you hear what your friend said about me? Aren't you going to do anything about it? What he said is too much," she cried, like a spoiled child. But Dario said nothing. There was no expression on his face. His eyes were unfocused. He didn't even glance at her. Episode 278. The Nerve to Ask Why. As Dario remained silent, David continued. "Well, Miss Stevens, you decided to come here practically naked. Am I wrong? Look at yourself. The woman sitting at that customer's table outside is dressed more modestly than you," David said with disdain. "President Foster, did you ask me to come here so your friend could humiliate me? Are all your friends so rude?" Amelia asked Dario, expecting him to stand up for her. She made a sobering sound and looked at him pitifully. David smiled and leaned back on the sofa and crossed his legs. He looked like a playboy. "You see, it's a good thing that we called you here. Don't you want to be famous? Well, I promise that you're going to be famous soon. Will that make you happy?" Amelia wasn't a fool. She had heard David's words, but she didn't trust them. She began to panic. "What do you mean? President Foster, say something," she pleaded anxiously, but Dario said nothing. She was the apple of her family's eye. Ever since she was young, men would chase after her. So why did she now find herself chasing after Dario? She was angry and frustrated. Dario ignored her sobbing. He slowly picked up the goblet in front of him and drank some of the red wine it contained. There was a bloodthirsty smile on his face. His voice was low and cold as he said, "What's wrong? Are you angry? Are you sad?" When Amelia noticed that he was finally talking to her, she was mollified. She put on an innocent look and leaned towards Dario. She said coyly, "President Foster, why are you doing this to me? You just let him bully me. Why wouldn't you help me?" David was tempted to laugh out loud as he watched her face. "Why?" Dario said. "You have the nerve to ask why?" He narrowed his eyes and scowled at her. He finished the rest of the wine in one gulp. Then he crushed the goblet in his hand. Amelia sensed danger. She looked at the broken goblet in fear. Her body turned cold and her palms started to sweat. He was terrifyingly strong. His eyes cut into her like a sharp blade. "You actually dared to attack my darling? Do you have a death wish? I think death might be too kind," Dario threatened. He wore a scary smile that made her shiver. His voice was even colder. "My darling? He must mean Jade," Amelia thought in surprise. Using such an intimate term was not his style at all. Jealousy and panic flashed in Amelia's eyes. But then she quickly put on a charming smile and pretended to not understand. "President Foster, what do you mean? I'm confused," she said haltingly. David, still sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed, said casually, "Oh my, Miss Stevens, we are well past the point of your confusion. We know what you've done. Why do you think yesterday's social media post disappeared?" When he mentioned social media, her heart skipped a beat. Only then did she comprehend the real reason they had asked to meet with her. It was all about the postings. She had spent so much money the day before to find people to post vitriolic comments on Jade's social media pages, but then their posts had all disappeared. So she had found another group, and the same thing had happened. She hadn't understood what was going on. Apparently, it had been the work of Dario and David. She stared at Dario for a long time. She couldn't pretend that he didn't know what she had done. All her efforts to slander Jade had amounted to nothing, and now she was caught. Amelia became even more flustered. She walked to Dario's side and grabbed his arm to beg for mercy. Lucas, who was sitting next to him, quickly stood up. He pulled her away and said coldly, "What are you trying to do? No one touches President Foster." Amelia took a step back in embarrassment. She said coyly, "President Foster, don't be like this. I was impulsive. Jade had always just been an extra, and then suddenly she had all these commercials for famous companies. Then she got leading roles in so many films. I became so jealous that I couldn't help myself. I know it was wrong." Her heart was pounding. Although she was taller than Dario, he still managed to make her feel like he was looking down on her. His aristocratic bearing subdued her. She'd never imagined that he would find out about her attack so quickly and deal with it so efficiently. It appeared that her attempt to discredit Jade hadn't had much effect. Knowing that Dario had found out the truth, there was no point in lying anymore. Lying would make him even angrier. She didn't want to offend him because she knew what the result would be. Now all she could do was try her best to placate him. She was madly jealous of Jade. Why did she get everything? She had her favorite man. She had fame and fortune. She had become a big star. On what basis? She was just a minor actress. If Amelia had known that Dario would find out, she would have been a little more secretive. She had no idea that Dario cared so much about Jade. Dario didn't give her a second look. In her world, it had always been others who humbly begged for her pardon. But now, she was in a position where she needed to beg a man to forgive her. Seeing that he wasn't willing to open his mouth, Amelia softened her tone and became even more pitiful. President Foster, I beg you, forgive me. I promise it will never happen again. David took an envelope out of his pocket with a wicked smile on his face. He said, Miss Stevens, we're glad you realize your mistake now, but it's too late. Didn't I say that I would make you famous? Do you want to know why you're still a third-string celebrity after all those years? It's because you never had any explosive news. Let me help you. I guarantee that you'll be one of the most famous celebrities on the internet tomorrow. You'll get a taste of what it's like to be trending, he added. David smiled evilly. It made Amelia feel very uneasy. Episode 279. You'll be famous now. Amelia became agitated as she looked at the envelope David had placed on the table. She had a bad feeling. What's that? She asked. Cold sweat beaded on her forehead. It's good stuff. Why don't you take a look? David said and smiled. He opened the envelope and took out some photos. He laid them out on the table one by one. When Amelia saw the photos, she was stunned. There were horrible images of naked people in compromising positions. She covered her eyes and screamed, Oh my God, why are you showing me these, you deviants? Deviants? David asked and laughed. He carefully examined one of the pictures. Miss Stevens, take a good look, he said. Aren't you the woman in this photo? I had no idea you would ever stoop this low. It's pretty close to a porn movie, but you look good. Be honest. Do you want me to introduce you to a few directors? I know a lot of porn directors. I promise you'll be very popular. What are you talking about? That's impossible, Amelia cried. Then her expression changed drastically. She glanced at the photos and did see her own face. They were all photos of her, other people, and her ex-boyfriend making love. Her eyes widened in disbelief. How is this possible? How could they have this? Has he betrayed me? No, this isn't happening, she thought. It was the first time Amelia had known true despair. These men were devils. They were going to ruin her life. David raised his eyebrows and watched her struggle. Women nowadays are really too selfish, but the woman in these photos is only 25 years old and she has so many men. Then there's people like me. I never had a girlfriend until recently. These photos paint quite the picture, don't they? How is this possible? How did you get these photos? They aren't real. The person in the photos isn't me, President Foster. You have to believe me. I'm not that kind of person. She just looks like me, Amelia quickly explained. She was afraid that Dario would judge her based on those photos. Miss Stevens, we aren't blind, David said. These photos are all from your ex-boyfriend. He gave them to us personally and told us quite a story. Your touching, romantic story. I think the media will be very interested in knowing the true history of the Stevens family heiress. David stared at her. You are quite the woman, he added. During his investigation, he had found out how horrible she really was. She had often played with other people's feelings, and he had heard that she was promiscuous. So he had figured he would check out her ex-boyfriends. You guys investigated me behind my back? Isn't that against the law? She looked at them in disbelief. Everything they had said was true, but she had changed. She only had eyes for Dario now. She wanted him to understand that. Now that he had seen these photos, she was afraid of what he would think of her. She couldn't accept this. Why? Why are you treating me like this? Don't you know that I'm in love with you? Those men in the photos are all in the past, she cried. She lunged at the table and began tearing the pictures into pieces. But there were too many of them. She couldn't destroy them all. In the end, she gave up and started crying. Seeing her with makeup running down her pathetic face, Dario remained indifferent. Tear them up. Tear them all up. I still have copies, David said, looking at her as if she was an idiot. If he had been worried that they would be destroyed, he wouldn't have laid them on the table. I will never admit that the person in these photos is me, Amelia cried, shaking with anger. The mole on the woman's chest makes it pretty clear, David pointed out. Are you familiar with Explosive Weekly? I happen to be very good friends with the editor there. Oh, perhaps you aren't aware, but that magazine is also one of my investments. Yesterday, the editor shared some very interesting information with me. There was an interview with your brother and a story about the Winslet family. You know, reporters these days, it's so sad. They'll write almost anything for the right amount of money. But as it turns out, that reporter was fired and the story will never come out. The next time you think about using someone like Miss Cordero, you should check them out more thoroughly, find a more reliable journalist, and don't let them take your money. You were duped. David laughed and looked very proud of himself. His laughter made Amelia even angrier. She hadn't realized how much they controlled. No wonder she hadn't seen the story in Explosive Weekly. She had spent thousands of dollars to find dirt on Jade, and all her efforts had been in vain. She hadn't expected Dario and his friends to be so powerful and so well connected. She had never stood a chance. More importantly, Dario and his friends were helping Jade. This made her both angry and mad with jealousy. She looked at Dario, whose eyes were daunting. Her heart sank. In the end, she decided to try to negotiate with him. Mr. Foster, you told me that as long as I helped Jade keep her secret, you would take care of me. You can't do this to me. I did say that, but now you've leaked the secret. You're reaping your reward, these photos, Dario said in a cold voice. She couldn't read what was in his eyes. Amelia turned pale as she considered his words. Episode 280, Amelia's Big Mistake. Why are you doing this to me? Amelia screamed. If you're going to post those photos, you may as well kill me. When Dario didn't respond, she continued in a slightly calmer tone. Look, I had a moment of weakness and I posted some stuff about Jade that I shouldn't have. It was a mistake and now you want to destroy my reputation because of it? How can you be so cruel? Dario's face turned dark. Derisively, he retorted, You've got to be kidding me. I warned you that if you tried to hurt Jade again, even in the slightest, all hell would break loose. I already gave you a chance to avoid the consequences and you blew it. So now, all bets are off. Amelia paled at his words and felt like her heart was turning to ice. He doesn't care about me one bit, she thought, filled with despair and fear. All he cares about is Jade. He'll do anything for her. She took a few steps back and somehow tripped over her high heels, falling to the ground. Ouch! She exclaimed. But if she was hoping for sympathy, she was mistaken. The three men just looked at her with inscrutable expressions. She held her ankle, which appeared to be sprained, and looked at Dario with a pained expression. His cold indifference made her angry. Mr. Foster, you should keep in mind that my family is quite powerful in Washington. If you slander me, my father will come after you, she threatened. Before Dario had a chance to respond, David barked a laugh and replied, You don't scare us with your empty threats, Miss Stevens. You and your family are small potatoes, and Dario doesn't need to worry about your father or anyone else. David's tone was arrogant, but he was correct. His and Dario's families were more powerful than Amelia's. She knew it, and it made her even more flustered. David is second in command at the Foster Corporation, and his family is among the wealthiest in the world, so he definitely holds all the cards, she thought, trying to figure out what to do. If he decides to go public with those photos, I'll never be able to show my face again anywhere. After weighing all the options, she reached a conclusion. I need to do whatever it takes to avoid this scandal, she thought, as she dropped to her knees in front of Dario. Never in her life had she knelt before anyone, and it was utterly humiliating, but she knew it was her only option. Mr. Foster, I beg you, she pleaded. Please forgive my momentary lapse of reason. I shouldn't have done what I did, and I'll never do it again, I promise. She was in tears by the end of her speech, but Dario didn't respond. He just stepped away from her, a look of distaste on his face. Amelia continued to implore him. Please, as long as you're willing to let me off the hook, I'll do anything you ask. I'll make sure that there is only positive news about Jade on social media from now on. He laughed dismissively at her suggestion and retorted, Do you really think Jade needs someone like you to hype things up for her? With her talent, she'll be sought after in the entertainment industry for a long time, and she definitely won't be needing help from the likes of you." After he had said his piece, Dario stood up and walked toward the door, getting ready to leave. Amelia was stunned, realizing that she had squandered her final chance to change his mind. Lucas and David also got up. Lucas turned toward her and said, "You should have known that he'd destroy you when you went after Jade. He won't let anyone hurt her." She looked at her feet, feeling hopeless. "I should have known how important she is to him," she thought remorsefully. Every time he mentions her, his voice becomes gentle and his face softens. The thought filled her with raging jealousy. "Why don't you look at me like that?" she shouted, not able to keep her emotions under control. "I like you so much, but you've completely ignored me. Don't you realize that you can do so much better than Jade? She's got nothing, no status, no money. What do you want with her?" "I'm superior to her in every way," she thought, glaring at Dario and daring him to answer her. But he didn't. Indifferently, he looked at his watch and then simply walked out the door. Lucas followed him, as did David. But before he left the room, David turned around and said, "You're lucky that you didn't actually harm Jade. Otherwise, you wouldn't be walking out of here. Dario was livid when he found out that you took another shot at her, and trust me, you'll pay for this. Oh, and one more thing. There's a gaggle of reporters waiting outside, so you better put on a pair of sunglasses and make sure you're not recognized when you leave here. The last thing you need now is more bad press." With those words, he walked out of the room and slammed the door shut behind him. Episode 281, Making Headlines. After David's departure, the silence was deafening. Amelia squatted on the ground, hugging her niece. She stared at the printouts of the photos that were lying on the ground in front of her. "If they go public with these, it will ruin my life," she thought, tears running down her face. "How can they do this to me? How did they manage to get these pictures?" In a sudden fit of rage, she started tearing the photos into pieces. "No, this isn't me," she shouted, madly shredding picture after picture. Soon a pile of paper scraps filled the floor. After she had destroyed the last print, she let out a violent scream and yelled, "Why did you do this to me, Dario? I'm every bit as good as that woman. You should have chosen me instead of her, and now you're trying to destroy me." Dejectedly, she sat on the floor, thoughts racing through her mind. "Once my family sees these pictures, they'll cast me out," she thought, sobbing. "I've always been the favorite, but after this scandal, they'll disown me for sure." Amelia had been the darling of the Stevens family since she was young and had been spoiled and pampered since day one. Having never experienced any hardship, she treated most people, and especially men, as toys that had little value. She had never had any reason to be afraid, but now she feared Dario deeply. She started to clean up the paper mess and accidentally cut herself on a piece of broken glass, but she didn't feel any pain. Numbly, she looked at the blood dripping down her finger and onto the ground. She didn't want to leave the room, afraid that there would be a gang of reporters waiting to ask her about the photos. "I'll just stay here," she decided. But not 5 minutes later, someone opened the door. It was a waiter coming to collect the empty glasses and straighten out the room. When he saw Amelia in her revealing outfit, he assumed she was a tramp. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the guests have left the room," he informed her. "Could you please leave immediately?" He took in Amelia's disheveled appearance and tear-streaked face. "I can give you 5 minutes, but then you really need to leave." Amelia looked up in annoyance and retorted, "Who the hell are you to order me out of this room? I'm Amelia Stevens of the Stevens Group, and I'll stay here as long as I want." The waiter was taken aback by her attitude, but he was used to dealing with arrogant rich people, so he squared his shoulders and said, "I don't care who you are, I've got a job to do, and I need you out of the room to do it. If you don't want to leave, I'll ask security to escort you out." Amelia stood up and limped over to the man. Her ankle was still very sore and barely supported her weight. "I don't think you heard me. My family is very powerful, and I can get you fired in a second," she threatened. "So how about you apologize and leave right now?" The waiter turned around and started to walk away, but just as Amelia was about to close the door, she heard him page security. "Yes, there is a guest here who came with some club members, and now she refuses to leave, even though the members left a while ago," she heard him say. "Okay, I'll see you up here shortly." The waiter turned back toward her and said, "Security will be here in a couple of minutes to escort you up the premises." "I'd like to see them try," Amelia scoffed, just as two burly men appeared in the hallway. When they saw her, one said to the other,
This is the woman who was with Mr. Foster and his companions. He wasn't happy when he left. They mentioned something about a scandal, so I think we need to get her out of here right away."
She tried to close the door quickly, but the waiter had put his foot in the door jamb. The 2 security guards walked up to her and grabbed her by the arms. "Hey, don't touch me," she shouted. "I want to speak to your manager."
"Let's go, Miss Stevens," one of them said. "You can go quietly, or we can physically remove you. It's your choice."
The club staff knew that they had the authority to escort her off the premises, since she was not a member, and because Dario had made it clear that he wanted her gone, the Foster family was highly influential at the club. They all but dragged Amelia to the front door and pushed her out. She stumbled and fell, her weak ankle giving out on her. When she looked up, she was met by the glare of multiple cameras. The area in front of the club's entrance was filled with reporters who flocked over to get pictures of her kneeling on the ground.
"That's Amelia Stevens,"
she heard someone say. "She's looking pretty rough." She tried to shield her face, but a group of reporters had already surrounded her and were asking all kinds of questions. "Miss Stevens, can you confirm the rumors that the risque pictures of you with several different men will be printed in prominent magazines tomorrow? Miss Stevens, is your father aware of your involvement with Dario Foster? Leave me alone, all of you," she shouted. "I've got nothing to say. No comment." She was in a sorry state, with her clothes in disarray and her makeup smeared across her face. "Go away," she screamed. "You've got the wrong person." She wanted to get away, but the reporters had surrounded her. What was worse, passers-by were stopping to watch the drama, and some were even taking videos and posting them on various social media sites. A few of the reporters started to chuckle at her outburst, while others continued to take photos. "Even if we don't get any answers from her, these photos will go viral in no time," someone commented. "Yeah, she'll be notorious not just in Washington, but all over the US," another person replied, chuckling. Episode 282. The Scandal Goes Viral. Sure enough, the next day, all the gossip magazines headlined Amelia and her alleged promiscuous behavior. "Stevens Group's Harris and her boyfriend of the week," read one headline. "Amelia Stevens exposed," read another. The photos that had been published along with the stories were even worse. Most were highly suggestive of unsavory behavior on Amelia's part. The celebrity magazine Explosive Weekly sold almost as many copies in one day as they usually did in a year. The chief editor was all smiles.
"I didn't expect Mr. Swan to hand me such an explosive story," he thought, grinning. "The printers can barely keep up."
Chaos broke out at the headquarters of the Stevens Group. Suddenly, all the computers went blank, and then the scandalous images began popping up on the screens. "Is that Miss Stevens?" an employee exclaimed in horror. "We need to inform the CEO immediately," her colleague said, her face pale. "He's going to be furious when he sees these pictures."
"What if it's actually true?"
another asked, sounding anxious.
"How do we break the news to him?"
They were interrupted by an angry shout from the massive office a few doors down, which belonged to Miss Stevens, the CEO, and Amelia's father.
"What the hell is going on with my computer?" he shouted. "Get someone from IT in here. I must have picked up a virus somewhere. There is some kind of obscene screensaver playing on a continuous loop."
While he was working, Ray Stevens' computer screen had suddenly gone blank, and when it came back to life, some odd pictures had started to flash up. He didn't take the time to look closely at the images. They were interrupting his work, and he wanted them gone. Then he caught a glimpse of a woman that looked a lot like his daughter, and a terrible realization dawned on him. When the IT professional arrived, Ray turned to him and said, "Make this disappear right now." The man paled at his angry tone and replied, "I'm afraid it's not going to be easy to make these images go away. Mr. Stevens, someone has hacked their way into our company's computer system, and these photos have been viewed by almost all employees. At this point, even the board of directors has seen them. Is there anything we can do to stop the spread of this attack?" Ray asked, his voice shaking. "We can turn off the power to the whole building," the IT support guy suggested, "but it will mean that nobody can get any work done." Mr. Stevens banged his fist on his massive desk and shouted, "Then go do it, now." "Yes, sir, right away," the man replied and ran off. Ray felt like he was going to have a heart attack. "I can't believe that these photos are real," he thought incredulously. "They must have been faked." But deep down, he knew that there was probably some truth to what he was seeing. He knew that his daughter was spoiled and arrogant, but he didn't want to believe that she had truly behaved in the way the pictures implied. Regardless of whether this is true or not, we need to do damage control, he thought, his face dark.
And how am I going to explain this to the rest of the family?
He collapsed into his office chair and buried his head in his hands. In short time, the company's share prices dropped precipitously as the fallout from the scandal spread. Even though the power had been cut off company-wide, almost everyone had seen the photos, and since they couldn't work, the employees stood around and gossiped. The big boss must be livid, no doubt. Can you imagine? His own daughter got caught up in a lewd story like this. This could be done in the whole company. The board must be furious. I certainly don't want to work here anymore, given what this would do to our reputation. The conversation flowed back and forth in waves. Most people agreed that they would resign to avoid being tarnished by this huge scandal. Meanwhile, Ray really was having a heart attack. As the reality of the situation settled in, he started to feel worse and worse. His assistant noticed him slumped on his desk and came running into the office. "Miss Stevens, are you all right?" she asked in a panic. "Would you like a glass of water?" He looked up, his breathing labored, and nodded. He took the water and tried to take his heart medication, but before he could manage, he fainted. His assistant immediately called 911, and in short order, the paramedics were carrying the CEO out of the building. Their job was made more difficult by the throngs of reporters that milled around the entrance, blocking the way. Once Ray Stevens had been loaded into the ambulance and driven away, the crowd's attention immediately turned to the assistant.
"Can you tell us what happened?"
one reporter asked, holding a microphone in front of her face.
"Did Mr. Stevens collapse when he saw the photos of his daughter?"
another one shouted.
"Can you confirm the rumor that Miss Stevens had relationships with several of the senior executives in the Stevens Group?" a third reporter asked boldly.
Episode 283, Hitting Rock Bottom. The assistant found herself surrounded and unable to return to the office, so she quickly dialed security on her cell phone.
"You need to get me out of here now," she said hoarsely, "and you need to disperse this crowd."
Turning to the gathered press, she said angrily,
"I have no comment. You'll need to talk to Miss Stevens in person if you want answers."
She sighed with relief when the security guard showed up and escorted her back inside. It had taken over an hour for the reporters surrounding Amelia at the clubhouse to get bored and leave. She knew that their photos would be all over the internet within a few hours. She sat on the ground for some time after the crowd had dispersed, her eyes dull and her face filled with despair. Her life seemed to have hit rock bottom in an instant. She wasn't sure how much time had passed before the club security guards told her to leave, making it clear that they would call the police if she didn't comply. She looked around for the limo that had brought her, but it had disappeared. She started making calls to friends and acquaintances, but nobody picked up. News of her fall from grace was already making the rounds, and people were avoiding her like the plague. "I guess I've just found out what my friendships were worth," she thought with a sneer. "All these people who told there they would be there for me any time that they thought of me as a sister. They've all disappeared into thin air now that I need some help." Aimlessly, she wandered the streets. For the first time in her life, she tried to hail a taxi, but when the driver saw her evocative clothing and state of disarray, he kept on driving. In passing, he lowered his window and yelled, "I don't give rides to working girls." Amelia blanched at his words. "I'm the heir to the Stevens family fortune," she thought, shocked to the core. "How can he possibly think I'm a prostitute?" Before she could come up with a response, the taxi had already gone. She sat on a bench, staring at the ground in despair. "This is all your fault, Dario," she muttered. "You set out to destroy me, and you've succeeded." She looked up, her eyes filled with hate. "But this is not over. I'm going to get back at you. You'll pay for what you've done to me." As she was talking to herself, a mother with a child in hand passed by. The boy asked curiously, "Mum, what's wrong with that lady?" The mother immediately reprimanded him. "Sweetheart, don't even look at people like her. She's likely on drugs and probably dangerous. Just make sure you never end up like that." Her words made Amelia cry. Other passers-by also looked at her coldly, and some were openly hostile. "I just want to die," she thought as a group of teenagers walked by and laughed at her unkempt appearance. After leaving the club, Dario had rushed to the Milliken agency to deal with a number of documents he hadn't had time to handle the day before. He was very efficient, so it took him less than an hour to do most of the work. David and Lucas were waiting for him to finish, and while Lucas was keeping busy with various administrative tasks, David was bored. He considered himself above any kind of office work. "Dario's sure busting his hump so he can get back to his little lover," he said as he sipped on a cup of boutique coffee.
Don't be so offensive.
Lucas rebuked him.
That's Miss Winslet to you. Whatever, David replied, shrugging dismissively. I'm still surprised that he was so lenient with Amelia. If I had been in his shoes, I would have plastered those photos all over every billboard in town. I think he's getting soft.
Lucas looked at him thoughtfully and said,
I think he's smart. Miss Stevens could still be useful down the line. What use is someone whose reputation has been completely ruined? David scoffed. Nobody will pay any attention to her once this scandal has run its course.
He had already completely dismissed Amelia. The only woman who held any draw for him was Monica. Dario looked over at the two men sitting on the comfortable couches, chatting and drinking coffee. He knew that Lucas would have been working if it wasn't for David distracting him. He caught David's eye and shot him an ice-cold look.
Have you settled the matter yet?
He asked Lucas coldly.
Yes, I hacked into the mainframe at the Stevens Group a few hours ago and made sure that every computer was running the screensaver with the photos on a continuous loop. I also just found out that Mr. Stevens has been hospitalized with a heart attack.
Good, Dario responded coldly.
There's one more thing, Lucas added. Miss Stevens was kicked out of the club and is now on the streets. Nobody seems willing to help her, given the magnitude of the bad press that's making the rounds. I didn't expect you to be a hacker, Lucas, David interjected. You have some hidden talents.
Lucas looked at him disdainfully and replied,
It's something I learned in the army. What about Bruce Stevens?
Dario asked, frowning.
Where is he? I'm sorry, I haven't found him yet.
Lucas replied apologetically.
I'm investigating his whereabouts as we speak.
He was embarrassed that he hadn't been able to track down Amelia's brother, given how well known he was in Washington.
I'm not sure if he's in town, he told Dario. He hasn't even gone to see his father in the hospital.
Episode 284, The Mysterious Investor.
Hey Dario, it's already noon. Let's go get something to eat. I'm starving, David complained. The least he can do is treat me to lunch, he thought self-righteously. It's one thing for him to be a workaholic, but he should be more considerate of his employees. At least he hasn't bought out my family's business yet. He'd be in for a rude surprise when he saw our books.
Dario, who was signing some documents, paused when he heard David mention the time. Quickly, he put down the paperwork and walked out the door.
Hey, where are you going?
David exclaimed, chasing after him.
How about that lunch? Stop being so entitled, man, Lucas chided him. Dario is heading to LA, so there won't be any lunch. That figures. That guy values getting laid more than his friends,
David complained. As he was leaving the office, Dario received a call from his mother. He looked at the phone, frowning. This can't be good, he thought. His mother rarely took the initiative to call him.
What is it?
He answered.
Dario, you need to come home right now,
his mother replied, her voice filled with urgency.
Why, what's going on?
He asked, wanting to get more details.
I don't have time to explain right now, she responded. Just come home immediately.
Before he could ask any more questions, Sharon had already hung up. Dario slid his phone into his pocket and left the office building, wearing a grim expression. Meanwhile, in LA, the actors were getting ready for the opening ceremony of the King's Palace, which was promising to be a grand event. The main actors were all A-list stars, and even some of the supporting cast were well known. The ceremony was being held at the plaza of the film studio. It was big enough to accommodate the expected large crowd. The support crew had been busy setting up a stage and rigging the extensive multimedia broadcast system. Jane scanned the attendee list and saw her own name, as well as that of the male lead, Robert Radcliffe. She had previously starred opposite him, and she enjoyed working with him. He's playing the king, she thought. So that means we'll be a couple on screen. I wonder how Dario will feel about that. She frowned as she took the thought further. What if we have to kiss or more? I'm not sure my husband would be pleased about that. The other male lead was a lesser-known actor named Hugh Summers, who played the role of a military leader. His character was also the childhood sweetheart of the Queen. With his help, the Queen was able to rise to her position, and she continued to rely heavily on him for the duration of the story. Jade knew that the relationship between her character and his was one of the highlights of the movie. They are setting it up as a love triangle, she thought, feeling uncomfortable. The ceremony promised to be a lively event, as more and more fans and tourists filled the plaza. People had surrounded the stage, holding signs and shouting the names of their favorite stars. In the front row, reporters were lined up, ready to snap pictures of the star-studded cast as soon as the actors entered the plaza. Jade noticed that there were several seats reserved for the directors and producers, as well as one chair that was labelled Investor. The support crew had put a lot of effort into designing the setting for the event, making sure it matched the period set of the movie. I'm surprised things haven't started yet, Jade thought. I wonder what the delay is. Just then, the MC announced that they were still waiting for the movie's main investor, and that the ceremony would start once he arrived. A short time later, the music started up, and names began being announced. With each roll call, the named actor stepped onto the stage to a huge round of applause. Nobody's going to applaud me when it's my turn, she thought, overcome with panic. There will be complete silence, and it will be really awkward. But when her name was called, huge cheers erupted from the audience as fans waved signs. One even had a picture of her in the golden dress. She was very moved by their appreciation, and she smiled when she heard her nickname, Goddess Jade. This is the first time I've seen so many of my fans in real life, she thought, feeling gratified. For a split second, she wondered if they were all actors that Dario had hired, but she dismissed the idea, as he wasn't even there. All right, the MC then said. Now, please give a large round of applause for the investor. Everyone looked up expectantly, but time passed and nobody appeared on the stage. Jade saw some people hustling backstage to check why he wasn't coming out. Murmurs were running through the crowd. Who exactly is this guy? Where is he? Well, he better show up soon. After all, he's the main source of money for this production. Jade listened to the animated discussion and was curious herself. What's keeping him? She wondered. Suddenly, a figure stepped onto the stage and the crowd fell silent. It was a statuesque man who walked with Feline grace. It only took people a few moments before everyone started to cheer. Wow, look at that guy. He's even more impressive than Robert Radcliffe, a woman exclaimed. Yes, he's incredibly good looking, a real Prince Charming, someone else agreed. Most of the women in the crowd were swooning over the mysterious man's good looks and elegance. Episode 285, An Old Acquaintance. Jade had found that investors were usually rich old men, and they usually weren't very handsome. But this investor was different, and she felt compelled to look at him. He had a smooth face with chiseled features, and his thick eyebrows were raised slightly in a rebellious expression. Under his long and slightly curled eyelashes, he had deep, dark eyes. He was undeniably bewitching and very attractive. There was an aura of power about him, like someone who was used to being obeyed. He also had a self-satisfied and almost lewd grin. The man was undoubtedly dashing and arguably overshadowed the male lead of the film, the famous Robert Radcliffe. There's no wonder that the youngsters are so pleased to see him, she thought, but he still doesn't match up to my husband. Jade had the feeling that she had seen this man somewhere before. She had a distinct sense of déjà vu and racked her brain for solid memories. It suddenly came flooding back to her. He's the man who assaulted me during the photo shoot at the beach that day, she thought. He threatened me with a knife. He had forced Jade to take her clothes off and pretend to kiss him so that he could escape from the people who'd been chasing him. Jade blushed at the memory. I never thought that I would see him again, she thought. At that moment, he looked over at her and noticed her staring at him. She could tell from his expression that he recognized her, but he remained calm, as if he had expected her to be there. He walked toward her and glanced at her indifferently. Then, he whispered in a voice that only she could hear. Miss Winslet, we meet again. I owe my thanks for what you did for me the last time we met. His voice was low and charming, and it lacked the urgency and hostility he displayed the day at the beach. Jade immediately came back to her senses and looked up at him. She was surprised that he had recognized her. He seemed like a completely different person from her assailant. That day, she had assumed that he was a gangster or criminal of some sort. She said politely, You're too kind. It was just a small matter. How was your injury? Jade didn't know what had happened after she had called him an ambulance, but she was content that she had done her best to help him. She observed the smile on his face, but she remembered how cold and calculating he could be from when he had threatened her with a knife and forced her to kiss him. She had surprised herself by the way in which she had helped him after that, but she had made a conscious decision not to forget how ruthless he could be. The investor noticed her indifference toward him and was intrigued by her. He was used to women falling at his feet, but Jade didn't seem to have any interest in him at all. He smiled and asked, Why did you call an ambulance for me after I had threatened you? There was a great deal of noise and commotion around them, and he was clearly confident that none of the people nearby could hear what he was saying. Jade briefly glanced at him out of the corner of her eye, but she didn't look at him directly as she spoke. There was no reason in particular. Maybe I just don't have the heart to watch someone suffer, she answered calmly. He was surprised at her answer, although he made sure that his feelings didn't show on his handsome face. He looked at Jade's delicate features. She has a real energy for life, he thought. Her face is enchanting, and she has a sense of style, too. He felt his heartbeat quicken as he looked at her. I just can't figure her out, he thought. He had pressed the knife blade first against her throat and then against her stomach, and in response, she had phoned an ambulance for him because he had been bleeding heavily from an abdominal wound. Is she stupid and naive, or just too kind for her own good? He wondered. After a while, he was introduced by the MC as an investor, and he left shortly afterward without saying goodbye. Jade paid no more thought to him, putting him in the category of someone she had once met. The host and the director then had a conversation on stage. They invited the author of the original novel to go up, and they discussed the concept of the movie. The author was worried that the actors would be too different from the characters in the novel, but when she saw Jade, she was very satisfied and said that she was perfect for the role of the queen that she had created. The fans seemed very pleased, and Jade knew that things were going well for her. Each actor introduced themselves and also spoke of the roles that they were to play, so that they all became familiar with each other. Afterward, the MC brought both the female and male lead actors to the front to introduce them formally. Welcome, Jade Winslet, she said. This will be the third time that you and Robert Radcliffe have worked together. This time there is also Hugh Summers, and I believe that this will be the first time that you have worked together. In the movie, you have a love-hate relationship with the male leads. So, who are you looking forward to fighting with most? The MC was teasing on the surface, but he was also making things difficult for Jade. If her answer lacked tact, the fans would blame her. After all, both Robert Radcliffe and Hugh Summers were well-known stars, and they had lots of established fans. Episode 286. Difficult Questions. Violet broke into a cold sweat. She felt panic rising as she wondered how Jade would answer the question. Caroline looked unconcerned, confident that she could handle whatever was thrown her way. It was Jade's first time answering questions under pressure, but she appeared calm. Robert Radcliffe has always been my idol. I respect him as an experienced actor whom I can learn a lot from. I've also watched every single one of Hugh Summers' movies, and I thoroughly enjoyed every one of them. It's a very difficult question to answer because I'm looking forward to working with both of them, she said. She finished with a smile and elegantly returned the microphone to the MC. There was a burst of applause. Her response had been very thoughtful. She had managed to answer the question without causing offense to the fans of either actor. She'd also hinted at the fact that they were both experienced actors and that she was younger than them. The MC didn't give up easily in his attempt to trip her up. He asked her an even more difficult question next. So, you're saying that you appreciate the opportunity to work with both of these screen stars, but in the novel, the female lead finds herself in a dilemma. If you had to choose a boyfriend, would you go for a mature man like Robert Radcliffe, or would you choose a handsome man like Hugh Summers? There was a commotion in the crowd as they speculated over whom she would choose. Fans began shouting Robert Radcliffe's and Hugh Summers' names in a chaotic competition to get their voices heard. The MC had the ability to get the crowd worked up, but his questions were challenging Jade's diplomatic resources. Jade forced herself to remain calm, and she maintained her smile. She was about to answer when Robert Radcliffe said loudly, Master of Ceremonies, let's start the next round of questions, shall we? Or we'll run out of time. The MC understood that the actor wanted to move on, and he responded to the prompt. Yes, you're right, Robert. Let's move on to the next round. Is the audience ready? He asked loudly. After the opening ceremony, the journalists swarmed in and started interviewing the celebrities. Several of the reporters came to find Jade and proceeded to ask her a range of questions, some of which were even more difficult than those asked by the host. Jade remained calm and collected. She gave her answers smoothly, and the people around her mumbled their appreciation of her elegant replies. Violet had been worried that Jade wouldn't be able to deal with the awkward questions, but she was pleasantly surprised to see Jade keeping her composure and holding up under pressure. It's amazing how quickly she's picked it all up, Violet thought admiringly. Jade had done very well at school, but she had always had a tendency toward timidity. Her background had made her feel a sense of inferiority, and she tended to doubt herself. Presented with the opportunity to shine, Her confidence was visibly growing. Wow, Jade is really great. If it was me, I would have been so nervous. Don't you think she's doing well, Caroline? Violet said, chattering happily. But Caroline didn't seem to hear her. She kept looking around as if she was waiting for someone. Below the stage, a woman was gazing at them with hostility. Rosie was playing a minor role in the film, so she hadn't been invited onto the stage, and she looked on with a deep sense of resentment. She watched the fans and reporters surrounding Jade, and her jealousy intensified. It didn't show on the surface, but deep down, she felt as if she was being driven crazy by envy. She clenched her fist tightly and revealed a sinister smile. You won't always be so lucky, Jade. Sooner or later, you'll find out how powerful I am, she thought. No one noticed a handsome man in a black suit standing 200 yards away from the stage. It was Bruce, and he was staring at Jade. At that moment, he felt no hatred for her. He'd chosen to go to Los Angeles that day for a business meeting, but that had just been an excuse. His real purpose had been to see Jade. He'd spent little more than an hour at the meeting, and then he had rushed to the film studio complex as fast as he could. He observed Jade from afar and felt inner peace. She's so dazzlingly beautiful, he thought dreamily. When she had been his girlfriend, he had treated her badly and taken her for granted. Jade had followed him around, willing to do anything for him. He had found her irritating then and teased her relentlessly, toying with her emotions. This had been some time ago, and he saw things differently now. She was so sincere and loyal, he thought, and I just took her for granted. I was a fool. He looked admiringly at Jade's smiling face as she fielded the difficult questions from the reporters. She's charming, everyone, he thought. They're all dazzled by her beauty. How did I not see what I had? She looks so radiant in that dress, and her smile is just so perfect. No wonder she has so many fans. He had been watching her from the moment she had first come on the stage, and he was reminded strongly of the times they had spent together before he had broken up with her. She looks so innocent, he thought. Boss, since the contract has been signed, we should go back now, his assistant said tentatively. Bruce ignored the comment, his eyes still fixated on Jade. He was standing like a statue and seemed unable to divert his gaze away from her for even a moment. His assistant looked at him, but she didn't say anything more. She was aware that Bruce and Jade had had a relationship in the past and thought it was strange for him to stand transfixed on the star, but she was reluctant to comment on it. Why is he staring at her like that? She wondered. They broke up a long time ago. Episode 287, A Surprise Visitor. The opening ceremony finished just before noon, and Jade heaved a sigh of relief. She had not expected it all to be so complicated. This director seems to like his publicity, she thought. She thought that the ceremony would be the end of the day's work, and she was surprised when the director announced that there was going to be a party in the hotel for all the actors and staff involved in the movie. At least the hotel is near the film studio, and there'll be food there, she thought as she changed her clothes. As Jade was considered a rising star, many people wanted to chat with her. She'd always had a low tolerance for alcohol, so she made sure that she didn't drink too much. After a few drinks, she knew that she had reached her limit, but several guests seemed reluctant to let her go. Please, excuse me, she said. I need to go to the washroom. As she extracted herself from the throng, she felt someone grab her arm and pull her to one side. She had to maintain a smile all day, and she frowned as she turned her head to see who had accosted her. She was shocked to see that it was Bruce. He looked calm and in control. She had the distinct impression that he had planned on meeting her and had waited for the opportunity to get her on her own. What is he doing here? She thought, her eyes betraying a feeling of disgust and impatience. She tried to shake herself free from his grasp, but was unable to do so. Bruce, what do you think you're doing? Let me go, she said angrily. I wasted 5 years of my life on him, she thought, and I'm not going to waste more time. Bruce saw the disgust in her eyes. He gripped her harder and spoke in a cold voice. Jade, long time no see. I didn't expect you to become such a big star in the blink of an eye. If you want to attract a bit more publicity, just send them my way. I've got plenty that I can say about you, he said. As he spoke, his gaze fell on the hall where the party was now well underway. If Jade called out, it would attract everyone's attention, and Bruce was relying on the idea that Jade wouldn't want that sort of attention. He knew that she needed to maintain her image at all times. She couldn't afford to be the cause of negative publicity for the film, so she stood still and looked at him with resentment. Bruce smiled slyly and dragged her to a nearby empty room. It was dark inside. He slammed the door shut behind them, cutting out most of the noise from the party. Jade shook off his hand, her beautiful apricot eyes now full of hatred. Bruce, you're crazy, she exclaimed furiously. What do you want with me? Hearing her cold words hurt him deeply.
How do we come to this? He thought. We spent 5 years together and she's speaking to me as if I'm nothing. I just don't understand. She used to be so gentle and caring to me. It's all Dario's fault. I hate that man. Jade, why can't you talk nicely? You were never like this in the past,
he said beseechingly. Bruce reached out and held her hand tightly. She resisted, but he showed no intention of letting go. Jade rolled her eyes at him, her expression one of ridicule. He lied to me for 5 years and then he dumped me to get with my cousin. Why does he think that he has any right to come here and start demanding answers from me? She thought. He's ridiculous. I'm sorry, she said, but I only talk to people, not dogs like you. She tried to take her hand from his, but he tightened his grip. The disdain in her voice made him feel increasingly bitter, and he said, I'm warning you, don't talk to me like that anymore or you'll regret it. Do you like being a big star? Remember that I can make sure it all disappears overnight. His words had no effect on her, and the mockery in her eyes deepened. What did I ever see in him? She wondered. So what? She retorted. I don't care if I'm a big star or not. I love acting, and I'll do the best job I can, whether I'm in a leading role or a minor one. As for you, Bruce, you should remember that you're a married man now. My career is important to me, but there is something that's far more important to me than that, and you will never take it away from me, she said with conviction. I suppose you mean your husband Dario, don't you? He answered bitterly. An image of her and Dario together in bed flashed into his imagination, and he had a sudden violent urge to tear her husband apart. She should belong to me, he thought jealously. Jade spoke in a contemptuous voice. Bruce, you have nothing to do with me anymore. You need to stop meddling in other people's business and go home to Ivana. And by the way, congratulations on becoming a father. Jade said the last words with a hint of irony. She was well aware that Ivana's pregnancy had been a manipulative scam. Hearing Jade's words, Bruce's anger increased, and he gripped her hand even harder. Jade struggled with all her might, but Bruce pushed her against the wall. He was far stronger than her, and he didn't seem to care about hurting her. Episode 288. I'd rather die. Jade groaned in pain. She twisted and turned in an attempt to get him to let go, but he seemed to be enjoying the struggle and he refused to release her. Bruce, let go of me. Have you gone crazy? She shouted in anger, hitting his chest with her spare hand. But it had no effect. In desperation, she kicked him hard in the groin. He exhaled hard, let go of her, and grabbed his crotch. She took advantage of the moment and ran to the door, but Bruce recovered quickly, and he rushed forward and grabbed her again. She shouted, "Help!" Bruce spread his hand over her mouth to prevent her from calling out, and the rest of her words were muffled. He threw her to the ground forcefully, and she felt a sharp pain on the back of her head where she hit the floor. She held her hand to her head and looked up at him. He had a malicious grin on his face, and she panicked as she realized that he was climbing on top of her. She struggled with all of her strength, but he was far too strong for her, and she felt dizzy from where her head had hit the floor. "Bruce, get off me," she said as forcefully as she could. "Dario, where are you?" she thought desperately. Bruce seemed to have read her mind. He reached out his hand, stroked her face, and looked at her leeringly. "Don't bother thinking about that man of yours. He's not here. He's still in Washington," he said, taunting her. "Do you want to know what I think, Jade? I think you're a tramp. We were together for 5 years, and as soon as we broke up, you went out and found another man. You want to be a big star, don't you? Well, let me tell you, I can make you famous as long as you serve me well," he said, stroking her face again and breathing heavily. Jade felt disgusted, and she glared at him with hatred. She knew it wasn't wise to go to him, but he made her feel helpless, and her anger spurred her on. "Bruce, are you even still human? What do you think you're doing? You're despicable. You and Ivana deserve each other. Who knows how many people she slept with when she was in high school?" Although her words were spoken in anger, everything she said was true. Her cousin had started sleeping around at school, and she'd even threatened to steal Jade's books and her food if she told anyone about her indiscretions. Jade had kept Ivana's dirty secret for years, but now the truth was coming out. Bruce's anger flared up as he heard what she said, and he reacted in fury. He gripped her jaw in his hand and stared into her eyes with a fearsome expression that made her stop talking. "You seem to have the time to think about other people's business, but you should be more concerned about your own affairs," he said nastily.
Do you really think that Dario could love an ugly duckling like you? What do you have apart from a pretty face? You have no parents and the rest of your family hates you. All Dario wants is to use your body, but he will get bored with you eventually, just like I did.
Jade spat in his face, and his features twisted in anger for a moment before he regained his composure and looked at her intently. She grabbed his arm and dug her nails into his flesh, leaving deep scratches. My husband is nothing like you. You are a shameless scumbag, and I'm better off without you, she retorted. If I had known that Bruce would be here, I would have never come to the ceremony, she thought. Hearing Jade call Dario her husband hit Bruce like a sledgehammer, and he took a deep breath.
Do you love him? He asked. Tell me.
He pressed down on her body and shook her violently. She tried her best to calm down and to think clearly, and then she looked at him coldly and said, Yes, I love him. I love Dario. It is only right and proper for me to love my husband. You had better let me go, Bruce. You know how powerful my husband is. Once he finds out what you've done today, he will have his revenge, she said threateningly. Hearing her admit that she was in love with another man was too much for him, and he felt like he would explode with anger and jealousy. Her warning didn't register with him, and he felt an overwhelming desire to destroy everything around him. He regained his composure and took her jaw in his hand again, controlling her face and forcing her to look at him. Without warning, he moved his face toward hers and kissed her on the lips fiercely. Jade's eyes widened in panic, and she used all her strength to shake her head in a futile attempt to stop his mouth from encircling her own. I'd rather die than let this happen, she thought. He was still too strong for her, and he held her face still, but she clamped her mouth shut and refused to open her lips.
Let's see if Dario still loves you after you've been taken by another man,
he said, breathing hard. Then he hooked his finger into her mouth and tried to force it open. Episode 289. A Cry for Help. He's completely crazy, Jade thought in desperation.
Bruce, let go of me. Don't you dare touch me. Get off, she shouted.
He ran his hands along her body. She feels so good, he thought, beginning to become aroused. I had forgotten how good her body felt.
Don't forget that you're married to Ivana. You're letting her down, she panted,
desperately trying to push him away. He stopped momentarily when she mentioned Ivana, but he dismissed any thoughts of guilt and continued to explore her body unrestrained.
You bastard,
she shouted. She knew that she was no match for his strength, so she looked around the darkened room for anything that she could use as a weapon.
So what? You said it yourself. She's just a tramp. I was just playing with her, but now I want to play with you,
he replied between pants. Jade was stunned at his vulgarity. Bruce was shocked by his own words, and he realized that he had longed to possess Jade for a long time. His desire for her had grown into an obsession, and he felt the need for her. Nothing I say is going to stop him, Jade thought as she reached out with her hands, scrambling for anything that she could hit him with. She felt a hairpin on her head, but Bruce's movements prevented her from removing it at first. She tried a second time and managed to get it. Holding it tightly in her hand, she stabbed the hairpin viciously at his left arm. He saw her movement and tried to dodge her strike. Although he managed to avoid the worst of the blow, she still made contact and broke the skin. He was momentarily distracted, and she squirmed out from under him and made another dash for the door, just managing to open it, but he was too quick for her. He grabbed her ankle and dragged her back, causing her to fall heavily to the floor. She was terrified, and images of Dario's face flashed in her mind. She looked up, saw a figure passing by the doorway, took a deep breath, and shouted with all her might, "Help!" Before she could say any more, Bruce threw her to one side and she hit the wall with a thud and slid back down to the floor. She sat there winded and trembled in pain and shock. Bruce picked up the hairpin from the floor and broke it in his hands. How dare she stab me with that, he thought. I'll teach her a lesson in manners. He turned his head and closed the door heavily, but it opened immediately after, and a figure stepped into the doorway, silhouetted by the light from outside. Bruce turned in surprise and faced the newcomer with a hostile frown. He stepped forward and grabbed the door, ready to slam it shut again.
Who do you think you are, meddling in my affairs? I'll cripple you,
Bruce said threateningly in a deep voice. Jade raised her head and watched silently. The light from the corridor shone in, and she saw the man's face clearly. He's the investor from that day at the beach, she thought. The man looked down at Jade, who was still lying on the floor, and then he looked coldly at Bruce. Jade stared at Bruce's injured arm, but he didn't seem to care about it. He was angry at being disturbed, and he pushed the man hard in the chest, but the man stood his ground.
If you know what's good for you, you'll get out of here right now, Bruce said aggressively. The man looked back at him, unperturbed. His expression was similar to the way he looked when she'd first met him at the beach. He looked murderous. Who do you think you are? He said. I'll give you one opportunity to walk away. Now get out. You must be tired of living, Bruce replied. He clenched his right fist and pulled his arm back to throw a punch, but the man in the doorway predicted the movement and blocked the punch with his left arm before delivering a lightning-fast punch of his own. Bruce thudded to the floor next to where Jade was sitting. The man looked down at Jade. She was wearing a simple blue dress and looked embarrassed, but she was still very beautiful. Was it you who shouted rape just then? He asked, and then glanced down at Bruce, who looked dazed. Yes, it was me, but how did you know that I was going to shout rape? She asked, remembering that Bruce had stopped her from finishing her call for help. I didn't think that anyone would come, she thought. The man didn't reply. He stepped toward her and held out his hand to help her to her feet. She was reluctant to accept his help, as her memories of him left her suspicious of his intentions. After a moment's hesitation, she accepted his hand, thinking that going with him was a much safer bet than being stuck in a room with Bruce. Where do you think you're taking her? Bruce asked. She's mine, he added angrily. Why does she attract men to her like flies? He wondered sullenly. Bruce got up and took a step forward. He reached out to grab Jade's arm, but the other man lifted his leg in a fluid motion and kicked him hard in the midriff. Bruce stumbled backward and crumpled on the floor. Episode 290. The Investor with a Knife. Bruce struggled to get up, but the man pulled out a knife from inside his suit jacket and hurled it at his lower body. It struck the floor between Bruce's legs, pinning his pants to the ground. The knife's keen edge glinted in the light that shone through the doorway. Bruce froze and looked up at the man in front of him in shock, visibly shaken and clearly petrified. Next time, I won't miss, the man said in a quiet voice as he walked toward Bruce, leaned down, and retrieved the knife. Bruce didn't reply, but he hit the floor hard with his fist in frustration. The man walked out of the room and Jade followed close behind him. When she saw that Bruce had not come after her, she let out a sigh of relief. Thank you for saving me, she said humbly. What kind of man carries a knife like that and has such a deadly range of skills? She wondered. He's definitely no ordinary investor. She looked up at him suspiciously. He seems unhappy somehow, she thought. You must trust me completely to follow me out of that room, he said, but I don't like the way that you're looking at me. His direct manner made Jade feel embarrassed, and she blushed as she wondered what to say. Her instincts told her to keep a healthy distance from him. Last time I saved you, this time you saved me. We are even, thank you, she said simply, and then headed toward the main hall. The man followed her for a few steps and said, Why don't you ask me my name? Jade stopped for a moment, turned and smiled politely. I don't think it's necessary. I doubt that we'll ever meet again, she replied. He may be the investor in the movie, but he's not a part of the film crew, so he won't be involved in the production, she thought, as she turned again and started walking away. The man frowned and said, Don't you feel embarrassed not to know the name of your savior? He walked around her and stood in her path. He didn't look like he was going to give up easily. Jade didn't know what to say, and she decided that it would be easier to give in to his request before people saw her speaking to him. She sighed helplessly and said, All right then, may I ask your name? Clive Carson, he replied. Make sure that you remember it, he added domineeringly. Jade nodded perfunctorily. Okay, Clive Carson. Mr. Carson, I will remember your name. Can I leave now? He didn't reply, and she was about to return to the party when her cell phone rang. She took it out of her bag and saw Dario's name on the screen. She smiled in relief and went to answer the call, but Clive reached out and snatched the phone out of her hand. What are you doing? She asked furiously. Give it back to me. Clive quickly typed something into her phone and then returned it with a smile. I've put my number in your contact list. Next time you want to see me, you know how to get in touch, he said arrogantly, as if it was a certainty that she would want to see him again. He was clearly used to women being desperate to get with him, but he didn't realize that Jade was not a typical woman. Why would I want to see him again? She wondered. She considered telling him that she was already married, but decided against it. Then a thought occurred to her. Did you hang up my phone? She asked. Clive replied calmly. Yes, why not? It was the first time that she had refused a call from Dario, and she wasn't sure how he would take it. You can't just hang up someone else's phone, she said accusingly.
"Ah, forget it. I'm going back to the party." She left Clive standing behind her, and she was about to call Dario back when his name flashed on her screen again. She hadn't expected him to call back so soon. She answered, excited to speak to him, but before she could say a word, he asked, "Who was it?" "Who was it?" Jade repeated quizzically. "Who hung up the phone?" Dario asked clearly. Jade hesitated for a moment and weighed the pros and cons of being truthful. She decided that telling the truth would be a bad idea. So she decided to lie.